A life and death match? Everyone was shocked. Long Chen wanted to kill? Did he really have the confidence to fight a rank 2 celestial? How ignorant, snorted Shui Yunsong. Yes, truly ignorant. Shui Wuhan nodded. But the same word had a different meaning in her mouth. Shui Wuhan knew that Long Chen was truly furious. He could accept anything, but he couldn't accept others hurting his comrades, especially not when they were someone impossible for them to defeat and when they used such despicable methods. Once that happened, Long Chen would become a completely different person. Do you think you're fit to have a life and death match with me? I won't kill you today, but I'll crush every single one of your bones to dust. Seeing Long Chen walk out of the storm zone, Shui Guanji was delighted. As long as he wasn't in the storm zone, then he didn't have anything to worry about. Long Chen, I'll make you regret provoking me. Shui Guanji suddenly spread his hands. Countless runes appeared in the space between them, forming a huge arrow. The arrow continued to grow, becoming hundreds of meters long. It was formed entirely of his runes, and a terrifying pressure spread that caused the other disciples' expressions to change. This level of attack could instantly kill them. The huge arrow shot toward Long Chen. It wasn't fast, but it caused the void to rumble. Its powerful aura had locked down Long Chen. Don't play this kind of senseless game. Bring out your full strength, or you'll die. Suddenly, Long Chen completely disappeared. When he reappeared, he was right by Shui Guanji's side, and his saber was slashing at him. What? Everyone was shocked that Long Chen could ignore Shui Guanji's lock and escape this attack. But was Shui Guanji trying to make a joke? If you wanted to lock down your opponent, you either needed stronger spiritual strength or a greater aura than your opponent. He had truly underestimated Long Chen. Despite immediately summoning a water shield and retreating, Shui Guanji was still cut by Long Chen's saber chi. Blood burst from his chest. If he had been any slower, he would have been cleanly cut in two. Long Chen's netherworld ghost steps were too difficult to deal with. As his cultivation base had grown, he discovered just how exquisite this technique was. His speed was too fast, so fast that others couldn't even react. The Celestials were especially horrified. They would be killed without even realizing it. The Vice Sect Master narrowed his eyes upon seeing Long Chen's footwork. He felt it was a bit familiar, but he wasn't sure. Shui Yunsong and the rest of the Shui family all jumped upon seeing Shui Guanji injured. Heavenly Dao recovery. Shui Guanji was also shocked. Just now, he had instinctively shot back upon sensing the danger. If he hadn't, he would have died. Now, he no longer dared to be careless. He directly summoned his true cry of the Heavenly Daos. Previously, he had only activated a portion of his runic power. He had always thought that summoning the cry of the Heavenly Daos would just be elevating Long Chen's status. But now he finally realized that if he continued playing around like this, he might play himself to his grave. Boom. With Shui Guanji at the core, two kinds of Heavenly Dao runes erupted. Space trembled as they interweaved. Even the flow of the current was forced aside by his power. For many people, this was their first time seeing the manifestation of a rank 2 celestial. It was much more terrifying than ordinary celestials. Even from 100 miles away, this pressure made it hard for people to breathe. Are they really going to undergo a heaven-shaking battle? The disciples were filled with anticipation. It was rare to witness a battle on this level. Suddenly, Long Chen began to rush away, instantly disappearing from other people's sights. People were at first astonished that he was running, but then Long Chen said, "Let's switch locations." In order to not disturb others, Long Chen wanted to change the battlefield. That filled these disciples with gratitude. Shui Guanji snorted and followed. Today, he was completely infuriated. This was his first time being slapped in the face. Although he couldn't kill Long Chen in front of everyone like this, he could definitely humiliate him as much as he pleased to retrieve his dignity. Now, he no longer even cared that much about the trial. If he didn't defeat Long Chen, he would become the Xiantian Dao sect's laughingstock. Don't just stand there. Even if you want to watch the fight, watch from inside, said Long Chen to the Dragonblood Legion. Because he was following the current, he reached the edge of the basin in just a moment. Gu Yang and the others hastily nodded. This trial was an extremely rare opportunity. They had already sensed immense benefits. The people who had been knocked unconscious had awoken, and they once more returned to their original location. With their previous experience, their speed was much faster. By the time they reached their original location, Long Chen and Shui Guanji were already facing each other in the distance. The vice sect master didn't stop them, nor did he have any plans to. For a genius to rise within a sect was a good thing. But if multiple geniuses rose, they would definitely fight. Geniuses were all extremely self-confident. They only wanted to recognize themselves as geniuses. Each of them wanted to be king, to be the sole ruler. That wasn't a bad thing. Geniuses needed all kinds of motivation and passion to get stronger. If everything was peaceful and perfect, a genius would have no drive. It was an iron law of the world that competition was required. This was a rule that no one could change, and so the vice sect master only watched. Whether it was the disciples in the Xiantian Sea or the four families' experts, everyone's focus was on Long Chen and Shui Guanji. Although I can't kill you, I can return the humiliation you've given me 1,000 times, said Shui Guanji arrogantly. Then be careful. I, Long Chen, am not good at fighting. I'm only good at killing. If I accidentally kill you, don't blame me. Long Chen shook his head. Arrogant. I'll let you experience the true power of a rank 2 celestial, a power you can only look up to. Boom. Shui Guanji's runes suddenly blossomed with light as if they had come alive. A terrifying pressure crashed down on the ground, causing space to tremble. The ground beneath Long Chen's feet suddenly cracked. Although Shui Guanji hadn't attacked yet, the aura he had released had already locked onto him. Long Chen was under Shui Guanji's terrifying pressure. Now that Shui Guanji had released his full strength and summoned the cry of the heavenly Daos, this pressure was no weaker than at the edge of the storm zone. However, the storm zone's power was spread throughout a large area, while Shui Guanji's power was completely focused on Long Chen, which was the only reason it could match the storm zone. As expected, a true rank 2 celestial is much more terrifying. That idiot Huo Wufang didn't even have half this power. Battle intent soared out of Long Chen. It had been a long time since he had exchanged blows with a true expert. It would be good to have a fight. Divine Ring. When the Divine Ring appeared, his powerful aura was like a dragon soaring into the sky. The Divine Ring had 3 colors, but on the edge, there was an incredibly indistinct color, one that was practically impossible to see. What magical art is that? Asked a monastery head. This divine ring possessed a will that could subdue the entire universe. Even heaven and earth would have to lower their heads. Such a technique was something they had never seen or heard of. The most shocking thing was that this divine ring was actually able to resist Shui Guanji's cry of the heavenly Daos. It wasn't like this before. Why are there more colors now? Some people had seen photographic jades of when Long Chen had previously summoned the divine ring. But those images were from when Long Chen had fought in the Jiuli's secret realm. The divine ring had completely transformed, and its new power had reached an inconceivable level. Long Chen, let me see just how strong you are. Shui Wuhan was full of anticipation. Although she had known Long Chen for so long, she was never able to tell what his limit was. When Long Chen summoned the divine ring, Shui Guanji immediately felt a great deal of pressure. That kind of feeling was something he had only sensed when he fought the other rank 2 celestials. Did Long Chen truly possess the power of a rank 2 celestial? If you keep hesitating, then I'll have to attack first. Be careful. You've bullied my brothers, so I'm actually quite angry. If you don't want to die, bring out your full strength. Boom. The ground beneath him crumbled. Long Chen shot forward, his saber mercilessly slashing down. I'll make you pay for your arrogance. Shui Guanji was infuriated by Long Chen. His words were a complete insult to him. Even a fellow rank 2 celestial had never dared to say such a thing to him. Water Dragon Twister. Endless runes lit up behind Shui Guanji, forming a huge water dragon that crashed toward Long Chen. Bang! The huge water dragon was directly cut in 2 by Long Chen. Long Chen found it odd how easily he destroyed it, but then his heart clenched and he hastily swung his saber behind him. 2 water dragons had silently appeared behind Long Chen. They were slashed apart by his saber. What? Long Chen was startled to see that the 2 water dragons had now become 4. Recalling how he had previously cut Shui Guanji's attack in 2, he realized he hadn't destroyed his attack. His slashes weren't destroying his attack, but multiplying it. Now 2 had turned into 4. Furthermore, he found that these dragons had actually absorbed some of his power. It was extremely strange. The 4 water dragons once more came charging at him. With another slash of his saber, the 4 turned into 8. Everyone was shocked, speechless. This was the first time most of these disciples were seeing Shui Guanji's fighting style. Such a strange technique was truly shocking. The more you killed, the more appeared. Wouldn't you be exhausted to death by the end? My water runes are my core runes. When I awakened as a rank 2 celestial, they all transformed into heavenly Dao runes. Each time you attack, my water runes will absorb a portion of your strength and condense new water dragons. Your defeat is inevitable, sneered Shui Guanji from a distance. In the storm zone, Zhao Wuji, Zhong Wen, and Yu Qianshan all had disgusted expressions as they looked at the multiplying water dragons. This was precisely one of the reasons they didn't like fighting Shui Guanji. His techniques were truly too irritating. He didn't face people head-on, instead releasing endless water dragons to attack people. If you destroyed the water dragons, that would cause your spiritual yuan to leak and be absorbed by the water dragons, forming more water dragons. You would essentially be attacking yourself. But if you didn't destroy them, then it would turn into a battle of attrition. With Shui Guanji's vast spiritual yuan, no one could beat him in that regard. Out of the 3, only Yu Qianshan had almost managed to beat Shui Guanji. He had immediately launched one of his ultimate moves at the start of the battle, instantly breaking through Shui Guanji's blockade to arrive in front of him. But the result was regretful. Shui Guanji had used a defensive secret art to block him. Although he had been injured, it hadn't been a heavy injury. After that, Yu Qianshan hadn't had an opportunity to approach him again. It had turned into a battle of attrition, and in the end, it was impossible to determine the winner. Furthermore, he had only had that one chance. After that, Shui Guanji was on guard against him and didn't give him any opportunity. More and more water dragons were appearing around Long Chen. Each one was 300 meters long. Now, there were actually thousands of water dragons, and Long Chen was surrounded. He was like a small boat floating on an angry sea. He might collapse at any moment. Long Chen's defeat is inevitable, sighed some monastery heads. No matter who was attacked with such an irritating attack, they would probably be stifled to the point of going crazy. Shui Guanji's water magical arts are practically unrivaled, praised others. Shui Wuhan was watching curiously. Long Chen seemed to be going all out against the countless water dragons surrounding him. She was curious as to why he was still attacking them. With his vast battle experience, he clearly should have seen through some clues. How could there be any unrivaled magical arts in this world? The vice sect master wore a faint smile as he calmly watched. He couldn't help but sigh. Perhaps he was the only one present who understood what Long Chen was thinking. Heavens, what's going on? You can't even see Long Chen anymore. He's been buried by tens of thousands of water dragons. The disciples in the current couldn't help being appalled by the countless water dragons. Long Chen and Shui Guanji had distanced themselves from the others. The only thing they could see was water chi and huge dragons surging. Previously, they had still been able to see Long Chen faintly through the water. But now they couldn't see him at all. If this continues, Long Chen will directly exhaust himself to death. How foolish, said Zhong Wuyan coldly. Zhao Wuji said, hopefully Shui Guanji won't torment him too badly, or I won't have anything to play with. I want to personally crush him and snatch his 2 women. With your face, no woman would take a fancy to you. Save yourself the effort. Suddenly, Yu Qianshan, who hadn't said a thing up to this point, opened his mouth. But his words were like a blade stabbing toward Zhao Wuji. Bastard, you want to die? If you're not convinced, let's fight right now. Raged Zhao Wuji. His aura soared and he took a battle posture. Seeing Long Chen and Shui Guanji fighting, he had long since started to get itchy for a fight. I'm not so bored. If you want to fight, There will be a chance in the future, replied Yu Qianshan coldly. Then he no longer bothered with Zhao Wuji. He absorbed the storm zone's energy as he watched the distant battle. Most people didn't think Long Chen had any chance of winning anymore. But the Dragonblood warriors were an exception. They didn't believe there was anyone in the same realm that could defeat Long Chen, not even a rank 2 celestial. Ah, Long Chen, you won't even be able to continue for a few hours before exhausting yourself like this, laughed Shui Guanji. Explode! Suddenly, over 10,000 water dragons exploded. A figure shot through the water, his saber landing on an astonished Shui Guanji. Shui Guanji's body was cleanly cut in two by Long Chen. Everyone let out startled cries. Shui Guanji had been killed? The Shui family's experts all stood up. Shui Yunsong's killing intent erupted. "Sa down," ordered the vice sect master. Suddenly, people heard a faint sound in the distance. They hastily looked over to see Shui Guanji's body explode. But the only thing coming out was water. There was no blood. A water clone? Everyone was shocked. They hastily looked around, finding Shui Guanji up in the air. His expression was exceedingly ugly. If he hadn't used his water clone just now, he would have been killed. This was his first time being forced to use his water clone. This clone was not a spiritual clone, nor was it a true clone. It was simply a clone he had condensed with his runic energy. This clone could only exist within the domain of his runes. He would normally keep it hidden in his domain, and at a critical moment, he could instantly switch places with it. This was one of his secret abilities. But now, it had been exposed by Long Chen. That made him extremely furious. "How did you do this?" demanded Shui Guanji. Long Chen flung the water off his saber. "I'm not your father. Why should I tell you?" "You." Shui Guanji almost exploded from rage. Long Chen's strongest point was his ability to enrage his opponents to death. But it wasn't as if his words were wrong. Why would he have to tell Shui Guanji? Wouldn't that just make it so he could defend against it in the future? Was he stupid? I understand. You were intentionally allowing the water dragons to absorb your spiritual yuan so that more would appear. Then, when they blocked my sight, you used a secret technique to detonate the spiritual yuan that belonged to you in the water dragons, and then took that chance to launch a sneak attack," said Shui Guanji. Everyone thought about it. It seemed Long Chen truly had intentionally allowed the water dragons to absorb his spiritual yuan, or their numbers wouldn't have increased so quickly. But how had Long Chen done this? All the experts, including Zhao Wuji and the others, didn't understand. The people who had exchanged blows with Shui Guanji all knew that as long as their spiritual yuan was absorbed by his attack, they would lose any connection to that spiritual yuan. They wouldn't even be able to sense it anymore. They didn't know that when Long Chen had his divine ring out, he could still feel his spiritual yuan. Even when it had been absorbed by the water dragons, it had its own specific marking. Previously, Long Chen had allowed the water dragons to absorb his spiritual yuan. Shui Guanji's water dragons truly were bizarre, and they did isolate his spiritual yuan from his control. But with his divine ring, he could clearly sense his energy in the water dragons, and when his saber touched that energy, he could detonate it. Even now, Long Chen didn't completely understand the divine ring's abilities. All he knew was that it could allow his aura to explosively grow and absorb energy for him. Now, he had found another ability. But this ability didn't seem to have any purpose outside of handling Shui Guanji's water dragons now. I also required you to work together with me. If you weren't so arrogant, you would have immediately reacted when your water runes exploded and immediately dodged. Now you should believe me, right? Bring out your full power, or you'll die, said Long Chen indifferently. Hearing their words, everyone couldn't help being alarmed inside. Just what kind of monster was Long Chen? He managed to see through the openings of any magical art in the shortest period. It had to be known that Shui Guanji had fought with countless people, and they had all been completely helpless against his multiplying water dragons. It was completely unexpected for Long Chen to be able to break this technique. The ones who were most shocked were naturally Zhao Wuji, Zhong Win, and Yu Qianshan. They had always found themselves restrained by his magical arts, so they knew just how difficult Shui Guanji was to deal with. However, his magical arts might be useful against others, but now they were useless against Long Chen. Shui Guanji was completely infuriated by this unexpected outcome. Shui Yunsong's expression was ugly. He also felt a bit regretful. If he had known Long Chen was this powerful, he wouldn't have told Shui Guanji to suppress Long Chen. If his Shui family could have two such powerful geniuses, then they would definitely become the champion of the four families. But no, he felt extremely uneasy. Did you think that I only have this little ability? Did you think your little flukes can defeat me? A bumpkin really is a bumpkin. I'll let you experience my true abilities. Skywater Prison. The water runes surrounding Shui Guanji all scattered, instantly covering an area of dozens of miles. Long Chen found himself trapped within a huge water prison. It was like a huge birdcage. Because it had come so fast and its scope was so big, he hadn't had any opportunity to run. This water cage was formed entirely of runes. These were Shui Guanji's core runes. They were like water but not truly water. Their strength caused the void to twist. Looking from the outside, Long Chen seemed like a bird caught in a cage. There was nowhere for him to run. Ha, Long Chen, let's see how you run now. Shui Guanji sneered and his hand's seal suddenly changed. The prison began to rapidly shrink. As it shrank, heaven and earth rumbled. What kind of power is this? How could it be so terrifying? No one had expected this water prison to cause such intense rumbling. It was like heaven and earth were unable to bear its power. Long Chen's expression finally changed. He found that as the prison shrank, the pressure around him multiplied. It felt like the world around him was being compressed. When it was compressed to the point of just a few miles, Long Chen felt like a huge mountain was crashing onto him from every direction. He had no choice but to resist with his full strength. By the time the prison reached a width of 300 meters, Long Chen estimated that the pressure could easily crush a rank 1 celestial. The pressure continued to increase as it shrank. Even Long Chen's physical body was starting to become unable to bear it. Long Chen, now that you're a bird caught in a cage, you should understand the difference between us. You'll never be able to make up for that gap. If you kneel and beg me, if you say you're a bumpkin, I will release you. Otherwise, even if I can't kill you, I can crush you into a completely deformed state now, said Shui Guanji. You're a bumpkin? That's all I have to say? Said Long Chen suddenly. Yes. Shui Guanji thought he was conceding, and he sneered with disdain. All right, I've said it and you've also promised, said Long Chen. Shui Guanji immediately understood that he was cursing him. And he had actually fallen for it. Fuck off. Shui Guanji furiously compressed the prison. He truly wanted to kill Long Chen now. Long Chen is completely suppressed. This water prison looks so terrifying. It's unexpected that Shui Guanji actually had such an ability, said Yu Qianshan. When they had exchanged blows with Shui Guanji, he had always used the water dragons to handle them. He had never faced them head-on. So in truth, his scheming ability was profound. He had held back all his powerful techniques. If it hadn't been for Long Chen, they wouldn't have known that Shui Guanji had such terrifying abilities. The water prison took only a moment to appear, and its scope was so great. If it was in a close-range battle, it really was impossible to defend against. The three of them all felt apprehensive. They didn't look favorably on Long Chen's odds. Since Shui Guanji had abandoned his defense and placed all his core runes into this water prison, it meant that this was his strongest offensive ability. Suddenly, an explosive sound rang out. Long Chen's shoulder shattered. He was finally unable to bear that pressure. Truly worthy of being a rank 2 celestial. This combat ability is truly shocking. It seems I've underestimated you, said Long Chen lightly as he looked at the blood on his shoulder. You still want to act calm? I want to see just how long you can keep that up. You'll quickly be crushed into a lump, said Shui Guanji through clenched teeth. Although he had imprisoned Long Chen, Shui Guanji was still infuriated. His strategy had always been to never reveal his true strength in front of others. But this Skywater prison was his strongest killing technique. He had once used this technique to bring down a rank 2 celestial from the corrupt path. Long Chen had far surpassed the amount of time that rank 2 celestial had lasted, and he had only just been injured. Just how terrifying was his physical body? A cold light suddenly appeared in his eyes. He definitely couldn't leave such a person alive. He decided to secretly concentrate all his power and instantly kill Long Chen. Even if he did kill Long Chen, although it would displease the vice sect master, he could say that Long Chen refused to admit defeat as an excuse. His death was just an accident. At most, he would receive some punishment. "You want to kill me?" said Long Chen suddenly. He smiled. He finally sensed that Shui Guanji had unleashed his killing intent. 3-star battle armor. 3 stars appeared in Long Chen's eyes. The primal chaos bead, which had been rapidly circulating, suddenly became still. A vast sea of energy poured out of the primal chaos space. It was like explosives had been ignited in his body. A terrifying aura erupted and a will to decimate the 9 heavens soared into the sky. What? Everyone was horrified. Long Chen actually still had a trump card, and such a terrifying one. Everyone felt a burst of terror when Long Chen's aura erupted. It was like the revival of a devil god. In front of that will, they seemed so minute. The water cage was like a balloon. It went from 50 meters to 30 miles, and it was still inflating. Boom. The terrifying water cage directly exploded from Long Chen's aura. Everyone's jaws dropped. "Do you still have any other techniques? If not, I'll be attacking." But Long Chen had already charged directly at a horrified Shui Guanji. Shui Guanji awakened from his shock and quickly summoned back his runes. They formed a shield in front of him. Bang! That incomparably tough runic shield instantly exploded. Shui Guanji vomited blood and flew back. Even the late sea expansion experts watching had to gulp. They were all shocked by Long Chen's combat ability. It had to be known that Shui Guanji's water shield was shockingly tough and supple. Other people's attacks were unable to bring out any force against him, but now it had instantly exploded. That meant Long Chen's current strength had reached a level that surpassed their imaginations. Is Long Chen a demon? Wondered a monastery head. All the monastery heads were shaken. This kind of combat ability was inconceivable. The vice sect master simply watched calmly. His gaze went from the divine ring to Long Chen's gaze. He didn't say anything, as even he had never seen this kind of magical art. It had already surpassed the scope of his understanding. Long Chen had to have huge secrets. He couldn't help but sigh. Everything Long Chen had was obtained through risking his life. Perhaps only such a brave warrior would be given the heaven's blessing. All great opportunities were left to the brave. It was unfortunate he didn't know that Long Chen didn't feel the slightest gratefulness toward the heavens. It was the 9-star He-Gem body art that had given him everything he had. Shui Guanji had borrowed Long Chen's attack to fall back. Seeing him miserably falling back, even the other 3 heavenly geniuses were shocked. Zhong Huiyan covered her mouth, filled with disbelief. They had all been tricked by Long Chen. Or perhaps it was better to say they had been tricked by Long Chen's slovenliness. They had been misled by how he didn't have any of the air of an expert. Every genius, even rank 1 celestials, would all possess an arrogant air and domineeringness. But Long Chen didn't possess that. He seemed just like an ordinary disciple. And so no one could tell he was truly a match for the 4 heavenly geniuses. Boss really is the boss. Guoran and the others were all in the red zone watching Long Chen worshipfully. Boom. Countless water runes once more condensed around Shui Guanji, shocking everyone. He truly was worthy of being one of the 4 heavenly geniuses. He was capable of releasing consecutive ultimate moves, and there was no sign of his spiritual yuan running out. The disciples all had to acknowledge the 4 heavenly geniuses. They were all practically monsters, unable to be judged through common sense. Seal the heavens, lock the earth. Rumbling filled the air, and blood began to drip from Shui Guanji's forehead. This fresh blood formed 2 different runes on his forehead. They corresponded to his 2 heavenly Tao runes. In that instant, all the runes around him became scarlet. They formed 3 translucent barriers around him. Long Chen, as a water cultivator, offense is my weak point. Now I've brought forth my strongest defense. If you have the guts, just try and break it, provoked Shui Guanji. Are you stupid? You're hiding in your turtle shell, and you want me to break it? Why would I waste the energy? I'll just wait right here. Let me see just how long you can maintain this turtle shell. Long Chen naturally wasn't so stupid. Furthermore, even before he touched these 3 barriers, just summoning them had made Shui Guanji pay a large price. Just from that, he knew this was his strongest technique. This kind of magical art might have a shocking defense, but the exhaustion rate was also tremendous. There was no way he could maintain it for long. On the other hand, Long Chen had the divine ring giving him a constant stream of energy. Shui Guanji was infuriated. He snorted, "If you don't, then I'll force out every single one of you from the Xiantian Sea." Countless expressions changed, even Shui Yunsong's expression became ugly. This child had been pampered rotten. At this moment he didn't care the slightest bit about principles. He had made this threat twice now. He had completely lost the mannerism a large sex disciple should possess. "All right, since you want to die, I can only help you out." Long Chen's gaze seemed like 2 sharp blades. He slowly raised his saber, and a majestic aura slowly rose. These movements are... The Vice Sect Master was shocked. "It split the heavens," said Shui Wuhan. "What? How can Long Chen use the heaven-splitting divine sect's sacred ability?" cried the Wang family head. "There's nothing curious about it. In the Phoenix Cry Empire, Long Chen found the first form of split the heavens, and then in the Jioli secret realm, he killed one of the heaven-splitting divine sect's disciples. Thanks to some people sending this news to the heaven-splitting divine sect, one of their people came to give him permission. Who would have thought, right? What do you say, family head Zhou?" Shui Wuhan glanced at Zhou Tiany's bald head. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." Zhou Tiany's expression didn't even twitch. "Oh, there was such a thing? And the heaven-splitting divine sect's people didn't take back Long Chen's battle skill?" The Vice Sect Master found this inconceivable. According to the heaven-splitting divine sect's crazy and unreasonable domineeringness, they definitely wouldn't be so kind-hearted. That person didn't make things hard on Long Chen. He actually gave Long Chen some benefits. Shui Wuhan smiled. "Benefits? How is that possible?" cried a monastery head. "Because Long Chen gave him a slap in the face, he gave Long Chen some benefits. I'm also not clear on the exact details." Shui Wuhan shook her head. Thinking of that person from the heaven-splitting divine sect, she couldn't help finding it funny. She really was unable to understand his way of thinking. People wanted to continue asking her questions, but in the end, they shut their mouths and focused on watching Long Chen. His aura was still growing. Even if Long Chen has learned split the heavens, so what? Guanji's defense is unrivaled. No one within the same realm can break it, said Shui Yunsong. He was clearly uncomfortable with how Long Chen was. As the family head, he had made this strategy which had caused a genius to be treated as a random weed. That was equivalent to saying he had no vision. If Long Chen defeated Shui Guanji, he really would have no face left. So in his heart, he still hoped for Shui Guanji to suppress Long Chen. Only then would it prove that he had made the right choice. If a leader couldn't even properly appraise people, then they really should step down. Long Chen's saber was currently pointed toward the sky. An immense saber image slowly condensed. Split the heavens. The huge saber image suddenly slashed down on Shui Guanji's water barrier. The barrier shook 3 times, but it didn't break. Furthermore, there were 3 runic barriers. Long Chen's attack hadn't even broken the outer layer. This is the famous split the heavens? The experts looked at each other in dismay. It seemed this was a far cry from the power rumored in legends. It was just a bluff, sneered Shui Yunsong. Buzz. Just as his sneer rang out, Long Chen once more raised his saber to the sky. An even larger saber image pierced through the clouds. What? When they saw that saber image, the monastery heads all shot up, filled with shock. They found out that Long Chen's previous attack had just been a practice blow. The first attack had shaken heaven and earth's natural energy. but the second attack had absorbed all the energy in the air. In that instant, the entire world trembled with a murderous aura. Even from a distance, it was like this saber image had locked them down. It was incomparably terrifying. This should be the second form of Split the Heavens. Shui Wuhan was also filled with shock as she watched. But she could guess what this move was. Shui Guanji was tightly locked down by a fierce sensation of death. He felt a chill throughout his whole body. "Bastard, you won't be able to break my defense." He roared furiously and suddenly punched himself in the chest. He vomited blood, directly using his essence blood to form a seal. The barriers around him brightened. Long Chen ignored his actions. He was completely focused on comprehending the will of Split the Heavens. Although it wasn't his first time using it, this time, he felt a kind of will that could break apart any and all restrictions, including heaven and earth. It actually greatly resembled his own will. He was currently trying to align his will with the essence of Split the Heavens. Rumblings suddenly filled the air, and astral winds raged. A power was bursting forth like an erupting volcano. Long Chen suddenly felt all his energy get sucked dry. He couldn't help being startled. His tremendous spiritual yuan still wasn't enough to completely satisfy Split the Heavens. Furthermore, he found that his attack had already reached the point of an arrow flying off a bow. He had no choice but to follow through with it. It wasn't under his control anymore. The huge saber image was like a bolt of lightning splitting apart heaven and earth, like a heavenly blade cutting apart the river of stars. It slashed down directly at Shui Guanji. Boom. When it landed on his first layer of defenses, that water barrier instantly exploded. It continued to the second. The second barrier didn't even last for a breath, and it also exploded. Shui Guanji's face turned as pale as paper. With a furious roar, Shui Guanji poured all his spiritual yuan into his final barrier. If he still couldn't block it, he would die. Boom. The saber image landed on the third barrier. The ground fiercely trembled, and even the disciples in the Shantian Sea were blown into the air. As a result, they were blown into the distance by the current. Some were even blown directly to the edge. This attack was too terrifying. It was lucky that this was a special place, or Long Chen's attack might have completely destroyed this land. When the dust scattered, people were horrified to see the ground had become covered in cracks. Long Chen was leaning on his saber, gasping for breath. Shui Guanji had disappeared from his original location, and a long ditch had appeared there. Shui Guanji was lying at the end of that ditch, constantly coughing up blood. What? Shui Guanji was defeated. Dragging his saber, Long Chen slowly walked over to Shui Guanji. His steps were a bit unsteady, but his imposingness shook people's hearts. When he arrived in front of him, Long Chen icily looked at the pale Shui Guanji. "Do you know? If you had just targeted me, this little competition would have ended here. Regretfully, you despicably sneak-attacked my brothers. What are you planning? You won't dare to kill me," said Shui Guanji icily. Long Chen smiled. "In this world, there's nothing I don't dare to do. It's just that you haven't touched my bottom line yet, so I won't kill you." Suddenly, Long Chen's saber directly pierced through Shui Guanji's chest. His blood splashed, shocking everyone. "Long Chen, you're courting death." Shui Yun Song roared furiously. Long Chen's actions caused everyone to jump in fright. Was he really planning on killing someone here? Did he not want his life? Long Chen didn't even glance at Shui Yun Song. He indifferently looked at Shui Guanji. "This is for my brothers. Remember, next time you do something like this, then even if you have a god as a backer, I swear I will kill you." He flung his saber, sending Shui Guanji flying. He miserably tumbled, wildly vomiting blood. Without a second glance, Long Chen began walking back toward the Shantian Sea. Everyone was deeply shaken by this. It was like they were watching a merciless devil god walking toward them. He was actually so powerful. All of a sudden, the saber Long Chen was resting on his shoulder shattered. It was unable to endure the power from the second form of Split the Heavens. "Damn it, can't you wait until after I finish showing off?" Long Chen sighed helplessly. He flung away the hilt and went directly into the Shantian Sea. He felt his exhausted spiritual yuan rapidly recovering in the Xiantian Sea. It was even faster than recovering with medicinal pills. Vice Sect Master, Long Chen went too far this time. Shui Yunsong stood and bowed. The Vice Sect Master waved his hand. All things have their reasons. If you want to play, then you have to be able to accept losing. If Long Chen had been defeated, what would have happened? Would you have felt that to be too far? Do you feel that because Shui Guanji is your family's disciple, defeating him is going too far? Just at this moment, Zhou Tianyi interjected, family head Shui, being so biased toward one person isn't good. Aren't you afraid of your other disciples growing disillusioned? I'm just judging the matter as it stands, aren't I? Shui Yunsong's mind was a bit chaotic now. It was not the time to fight, so he directly shut his mouth. Nice job, boss. When Long Chen passed by the Dragon Blood Legion, Guoran and the others all looked at him worshipfully. Deciding to follow Long Chen had truly been the best decision of their lives. Long Chen smiled at them and continued forward. Winking at Meng Qi and Tang Wan, he went straight toward the storm zone. The pressure was the greatest there, but his recovery speed would also be the fastest there. Once he was in the violet zone, he didn't continue forward. He just relied on the current's practically limitless energy to recover his spiritual yuan. At this time, the heavily injured Shui Guanji stood up and walked back to the Xiantian Sea. Long Chen had merely stabbed him, and that attack hadn't contained any other forces. So while his injury had appeared frightening, it hadn't been at all fatal. That was especially true since he was a water cultivator, and his natural recovery ability was greater than others. Shui Guanji also entered the violet zone. This time, Long Chen didn't stop him. A gentleman should be magnanimous and clearly understand enmities. He had already gotten his revenge for his brothers. Long Chen, I won't let things off just like this. We still have a long time to play, snorted Shui Guanji when he detoured around Long Chen. Long Chen ignored Shui Guanji. Although he had to admit that Shui Guanji was extremely powerful, he wasn't afraid of him. It was just that now, Long Chen was much more on guard toward the other rank 2 Celestials. Shui Guanji was a rather special case amongst the 4 of them. His combat strength lay in his defense, not offense. Furthermore, with this fellow's character, he definitely wouldn't expose his true trump cards unless he had to. Although he had heard that when the 4 of them had exchanged blows and they had been equally matched, that was simply because it hadn't been a battle to the death. They had merely used probing blows. Today, he had provoked Shui Guanji and found many abilities that he hadn't used before. That meant the other rank 2 Celestials also had to be hiding terrifying trump cards. Just Shui Guanji, who didn't specialize in offense, was already able to push Long Chen to the point that he had no choice but to use all his trump cards. Then Zhao Wuji, who was widely known for his offense, would definitely be much more terrifying. Long Chen's gaze roamed around. As expected, he saw overflowing battle intent coming from Zhao Wuji. It seemed he had an urge to fight Long Chen right now. As for Yu Qianshan, his gaze was like a sword. He also seemed interested. Only Zhong Wuyan's expression was indifferent, making it impossible to tell what she was thinking. That made Long Chen snort. It seemed things would be very lively. This was Long Chen's first time encountering such powerful opponents. He felt his own blood boiling with battle intent. Long Chen might not have an arrogant air, but he had a lofty and unyielding character. His arrogance was concealed in the depths of his soul. Thus, he also thirsted to fight with experts. Currently, Zhao Wuji, Zhong Wen, Yu Qianshan, Shui Guanji, and Long Chen were going deeper into the storm zone from 5 different directions. They moved slowly, because the closer they got to the core of the storm zone, the stronger the current grew. But Long Chen didn't continue forward. Although the tide contained all the energies of heaven and earth, and any cultivator would gain huge benefits from it, he was different. He was not an elemental cultivator. He controlled flame energy and thunder force, but he didn't need to do anything to absorb those energies. Lei Long and Hua Long had already reached the core of the storm zone and were absorbing energy. Although they had separated from him, he could sense their emotions. Those two were crazily devouring energy there with extreme joy. Furthermore, the two of them listened to what he had said. They kept themselves small. They were only a few inches long, and outsiders were unable to sense their existence. Of course, compressing their bodies meant they couldn't absorb energy as easily. It was fortunate that the energy at the core had practically reached a solid state, and so it was compressed enough for them to devour their fill. Shui Guanji and the others were doing their best, but they finally reached their limit a few miles from the core. They were unable to advance another inch. But this place was already enough to give them endless benefits that surpassed their imaginations. They were doing their best to absorb their own specific energies from the current. If Long Chen continued forward, the current's energy could rapidly strengthen his body, and he would be able to release even greater strength in the future. But he decided not to do that. That was because he felt that doing that wouldn't have any meaning. The body-strengthening aspect from the Storm Zone couldn't compare to Enlightenment Palace pills. There was no need to waste that time. His energy was rapidly recovering in the current, and he was fully recovered in just 2 hours. That was too miraculous, as he would have required several days to do the same outside this sea. Once he was recovered, in front of everyone's uncomprehending gazes, he left the Storm Zone. He walked over to Meng Qi and Tang Wan. Long Chen, Meng Qi, I'll bring Wana into the Storm Zone. She'll be able to gain even greater benefits there. But you, said Long Chen apologetically. It's fine. In truth, the Shen-Tian Sea isn't too useful to me. A beast tamer's body is just too weak. Even if it's strengthened, there's a limit. You should bring Wana along, said Meng Qi. Meng Qi, can you endure it? Asked Long Chen worriedly. I'll be fine. I've already grown accustomed to it. I told Wana to go ahead on her own before, but she refused. This opportunity is rare, so don't waste time worrying about me. Meng Qi smiled toward Tang Wan. Long Chen nodded. He brought Tang Wana over to the Storm Zone. When they approached the border, Tang Wana was clearly under extremely great pressure. She was slightly pale. Long Chen directly activated his divine ring, blocking the pressure for Tang Wana. She gratefully smiled toward Long Chen. Let's go. He directly charged into the Storm Zone with her. With his assistance, Tang Wana easily entered. The majority of the pressure had been blocked by him. I'll slowly withdraw my strength, so the pressure on you will gradually increase, said Long Chen. Seeing Tang Wana nod, he began to pull back his strength. Although she had been prepared, Tang Wana still jumped. The instant Long Chen began to withdraw his power, she felt like countless mountains had begun collapsing on her. But Long Chen went slowly, giving her a great deal of time to accustom herself. Even so, it took Tang Wana 2 hours before she could just barely endure it. All right, you can absorb the wind energy here. It will increase your comprehension as well as adaptability. I'll come to find you later. After setting up Tang Wana, Long Chen returned to the Red Zone. Seeing Long Chen actually use his precious time to pull Tang Wana into the Storm Zone, countless Celestials were incredibly envious. As for the monastery heads, they were lost in thought. Long Chen was sacrificing much to do this. He was giving up his cultivation time. Was he not afraid of being surpassed by others? It had to be known that the cultivation path was filled with struggles. No one would give up opportunities like this, not even if they were giving them up for a wife or a brother. In fact, to obtain such an opportunity, it was all too common for them to turn hostile against their own kin. Why did he go out again? No one understood. Because she was a member of the 3 peerless beauties, practically everyone in the Shen-Tian Dao sect knew that Meng Qi was a beast tamer. She couldn't possibly enter the Storm Zone. He wouldn't. Is he really? People were stunned to see that Long Chen was going toward Gu Yang and the others. Brothers, are you prepared? Long Chen smiled. Boss, are you serious? Gu Yang was startled and delighted. Yes. I'll also drag you guys in. That place will multiply the benefits for you. I just don't know if you dare to or not, laughed Long Chen. Of course we dare. Boss, quickly bring us in, cried Gu Yang and the others excitedly. Even here, they felt themselves strengthening with every passing moment. But the Storm Zone was something only second-rank Celestials could enter. Rank 1 Celestials didn't even have the qualifications to get close. The benefits there could make a person drool. Alright, then the captains can follow me. As for the squad leaders and below, you won't be able to enter, said Long Chen. The Legion's captains were Gu Yang, Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Yu Zifeng. The Dragonblood Legion was composed of 360 members. They were split into 36 squads, each with a squad leader. The 4 captains were each in charge of 9 squads. The squad leaders were the strongest of the squads. But compared to Gu Yang and the other captains, the difference was extremely great. Brothers, I'm cheering for you. Have a good trip, ha. Seeing that Long Chen didn't mention him, Guoran was extremely relieved. But a single sentence from Long Chen made him turn green. Guoran, you're also coming. Boss, my body's too weak. It's even weaker than one of our ordinary brothers. I should stay here and just cheer for you. Boss, please, I don't want to go. I'll die if I go. Please, boss, release me. I have a mother, and I want to have babies one day, begged Guoran. But Long Chen ignored him. He simply dragged him over. No matter how he begged, Guoran was unable to stop Long Chen's footsteps. All 4 captains of the Legion have come. As the head general, you can't be excused. Even if you die, you have to die inside the storm zone, said Long Chen as he dragged a wailing Guoran. Boom! As Long Chen pushed his divine ring to its peak, the 5 of them forced their way through the current. However, this time, Long Chen was under extremely great pressure. The tide's strength would adjust itself according to a person's power. Now that he was enduring the pressure for the 5 of them, he felt a powerful resistance. They weren't celestials, and so they couldn't compare to Tangwana. If he didn't do this, they would be instantly crushed. Seeing Long Chen bringing 5 people to the storm zone, countless jaws dropped. This was truly ruthless. What a fool. He's wasting such a good opportunity. Pulling in Tangwana was one thing. After all, she's a celestial and has plenty of room to grow. But to drag in 5 ordinary disciples is just a waste of time. Especially that crying fellow. He's clearly just trash. No matter how good Long Chen's talent is, if he just wastes his time like this, he'll quickly be thrown into the distance, said Shui Yunsong. The other experts also nodded. Tangwana was a wind cultivator, and pulling her into the storm zone gave her limitless prospects. Doing such a thing had been worthy of praise. But pulling in 5 ordinary disciples made people speechless. Was he really so bored? Furthermore, wouldn't those 5 people be crushed to death as soon as they entered? Hearing Shui Yunsong ridicule Long Chen, Shui Wuhan said, Long Chen has his own thoughts. He doesn't meet the standards of a leader, but he definitely meets the standards of a cultivator. He treats each person by his side as a brother and is willing to entrust his back to any of those brothers. That kind of trust is something we can't understand. For example, I can guarantee that Long Chen has his own goal with his current actions. Just because others can't understand it doesn't mean it's foolish. Shui Yunsong's expression sank. Shui Wuhan was becoming more and more unbridled, to actually say such a thing in front of everyone. She didn't give him the slightest face. The reason why Shui Wuhan could say such things was because she had a peerless genius like Long Chen by her side. It was also because of Long Chen that she had received the favor of the vice sect master. Now her wings had truly grown, and she no longer needed to care about her family head. Shui Yunsong's eyes were cold. A young person always feels like they can do unrealistic things once they gain a bit of power. Does he really think he can defy the heavens? Does he think he can escape the restriction of the world's laws? Shui Wuhan smiled disdainfully. In truth, Shui Yunsong was talking about her. He was saying it would be arrogant of her to think that she could escape the control of the Shui family. His meaning was that he was the family head, and she shouldn't get carried away by her wishful thinking. She smiled coldly inside. Was a pompous family head position so great? Did he think everyone wanted that kind of position where the only thing you did all day was scheme? She couldn't be bothered to say anything. Her previous words had simply been because she was dissatisfied with Shui Yunsong belittling Long Chen. It was unexpected that this old fellow would actually raise the conflict to a new level once she defended Long Chen with a few words. Suddenly, Zhou Tianyi interjected, Brother Yunsong's words are a bit wrong. A horse dislikes the narrow path, and the great Preng hates how low the heavens are. Even the vice sect master has already said that this world belongs to these children. Could it be that Brother Yunsong is calling into question the vice sect master's words? Ooh, Shui Yunsong raged. Zhou Tianyi was too evil to use the vice sect master to suppress him. Although he knew he was only helping Shui Wuhan to cause conflict between them, he couldn't help feeling furious. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable shriek rang out. That shriek was like the dying cries of a pig being butchered. It cut off their words, and they hastily looked at the Xiantian Sea. At the edge of the storm zone, Long Chen stood while 5 others lay on the ground. 4 of them were bitterly enduring as they constantly vomited blood. But one person was vomiting blood while crazily shrieking. Those miserable sounds were incredibly unpleasant to listen to. Don't worry, even if you break your throat screaming, no one will come to save you, said Long Chen indifferently. He knew Guoran was doing this on purpose. He was probing him, wanting to see if he would become soft-hearted and let him off. But Long Chen truly couldn't let any of them off. Once he had brought the 5 of them in, he had immediately withdrawn half his power. Although he had warned them, they had still been unable to endure it. They immediately collapsed on the ground, unable to move. And even at this time, Long Chen didn't let them off. He continued to slowly weaken his power. The pressure on them continued to increase. Ah! I'll die! Guoran was crazily screaming. But in the end, the pressure increased so much that he wasn't even able to scream. The unpleasant sound of bones breaking rang out. Everyone's expressions changed and they felt a chill. The storm zone was truly too terrifying. Boss, I can't endure. Li Qi's voice came from his clenched teeth. Even his ability to speak was quickly fading. He felt like he was about to be crushed flat. There wasn't even room for air in his lungs. That's all right. If you can't endure it, then don't, said Long Chen. Boss, crit. The sound of bones breaking continued to ring out. Those who had been envious of the Dragonblood Legion no longer felt the slightest bit of envy. Guoran had already fainted. Every single one of his bones had shattered. He had already passed out from the pain, and he had been squashed so flat that his surface area on the ground had increased quite a bit. Even the monastery heads began to sweat from watching this. This was too vicious. What was Long Chen doing? The pain of broken bones wasn't so bad. But now, all of their bones had been shattered to pieces. That level of pain could make a person die. Even if they didn't die, they would definitely go crazy. This was more vicious than any torture. Are you sure these people are Long Chen's brothers? Asked an expert from the Shui family. This is clearly sending them to their deaths. Even if they live, they'll form a huge heart devil and will never advance again. Is this how the 36th super monastery raises its disciples? Shut up. If you don't understand, then don't talk, ordered the vice sect master. Long Chen is giving them a huge opportunity. This Xiantian Sea is something our Xiantian Dao sect used 108,000 spirit gathering formations to form. Those formations extracted the 5 regions' most primal energies to create this tide. Within it is a trace of heaven and earth's purest form of energy. Long Chen is having these people completely rebuild their skeletons in hopes that they can absorb a trace of that primal energy in the process. That primal energy can increase their chances of becoming celestials in the future. And even if they can't become celestials, they'll still have unlimited prospects once they reach sea expansion. They'll advance much easier than others. If you're ignorant, then keep your mouths shut. As monastery heads, how can you not use your heads when speaking? It's no wonder the disciples you raised are so stupid. Everyone trembled. This was their first time hearing the vice sect master explain the origin of the Xiantian Sea. They hadn't known any of this before. Then vice sect master, doesn't that mean we could use the Xiantian Sea to create more celestials? Asked the Wang family head. The vice sect master sighed. How could it be so simple? First of all, ordinary disciples aren't even able to get close to the storm zone. You can see that even rank 1 celestials aren't able to do so, let alone them. Only the storm zone's energy is pure enough. Only that energy is able to allow the ordinary disciples to reforge completely new bones. Only rank 2 celestials have the qualifications to enter that zone. If it were you, would you have your peerless geniuses waste their time on ordinary disciples? And even if you ordered it, would they really give up on such a huge opportunity to help others? It's simply not possible. Hearing this, everyone became silent. People were selfish. People might do favors for others if the cost was low. But as for sacrificing themselves to only help out others, that would just be a joke. Even if rank 2 celestials did sacrifice their time to help others, it still wouldn't do anything, said the vice sect master. Why not? Because to use the energy here to reforge your bones completely requires you to endure the pain of all your bones shattering for a total of 9 times. Without a strong enough will, a person will either die or go crazy. 9 times? The experts here felt like they might go crazy. Just hearing this was frightening. This was too vicious. There's no way around it. Without talent, without resources, without a powerful backer, those who want to have higher accomplishments than others must put in more effort than others. They now had a greater understanding of Long Chen and the others. They were all people who had nothing. The things they had were things they had risked their lives to obtain. Only by walking the line between life and death did they have their current ability. Although they were young, these people were worthy of respect. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, even the one with the strongest physical body, Gu Yang, ended up fainting. Only then did Long Chen increase his power to help them block the pressure. He also gave them a healing pill. An hour later, once they had awakened and their bones had healed, he once more put away his divine ring, having them undergo the pain of their bones shattering. The distant dragon blood warriors all trembled. This was their first time seeing Gu Yang and the others in such a miserable state. They were filled with gratitude. When the Dragon Blood Legion had been formed, Long Chen had said that getting stronger was so you could protect the things valuable to you. It was because of that goal that they had chosen to get stronger. As for Gu Yang and the others, the pain they were enduring was to protect all of them. It was to reduce casualties amongst them. Looking at the pain they were in, each of the Dragon Blood warriors wished to endure it with them. Brothers, compared to the captains, we have it too easy. True brothers should go through hardships together. One of the squad leaders waved his hand, and everyone began to force their way deeper into the sea. When they were less than 3 miles away from the storm zone, they finally had no choice but to stop. Even rank 1 celestials were only a mile or 2 ahead of them. The pressure here caused their blood to churn. Some of them were vomiting blood, but their expressions were full of pride. They were sharing in the pain of the captains. This scene deeply shook countless hearts. They were unable to understand how they could possess such sincere emotions toward each other. Quite a few eyes turned red as they watched this touching scene. Ugh, boss, I can't endure it. I'm going to go crazy. On the 6th cycle, Guoran suddenly began to cry, his eyes scarlet. This torture had brought his mind to the brink of insanity. Then let me ask you, do you want beauties? Asked Long Chen. Yes. Do you want to be a hero? Yes. Do you want to show off in front of countless people? Yes. What is your greatest dream? I want to be a poser together with boss, roared Guoran. Then do you want to continue? Yes. People didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was both shocking as well as comedic. But only Long Chen knew that the thing Guoran liked to do the most was to show off. If it was in order to stand in the spotlight, he would be willing to suffer any pain. Guoran's mind had already reached its limit. When it came to will, he was greatly lacking compared to Gu Yang and the others. Only the thought of showing off allowed him to continue. In front of everyone's stunned gazes, Guoran really managed to endure having his bones shattered 9 times. When he woke up, he wasn't crazy. Rumbling filled the air, and heaven and earth resonated with it. The tide suddenly came to a stop. What? It's over? Asked a startled monastery head. Previously, the Shintian Sea would stay open for at least 7 days each time it was activated. But this time, it disappeared after just 3 days? Even the vice sect master's expression was grim. After a moment of silence, he sighed. Perhaps countless monsters are soaring within the Xiantian Dao sect. Vice sect master, what's going on? The Xiantian Sea is activated at all 5 regions at the same time. Their energies are connected. In all the previous trials, it had enough energy to last 7 to 10 days. When the Xiantian Sea's energy is exhausted to a certain point, it automatically disappears. Now it disappeared after just 3 days. In other words, the Xiantian Sea's energy has already been used up. Everyone was startled. Their Xiantian Dao sect had entered an unprecedented flourishing period. With the 4 heavenly geniuses and Longchen, they had thought they would be able to rival the other branch sections. But this scene before them made their hearts sink. The energy that should have taken 7 days to exhaust had all been absorbed in just 3 days. That meant that other regions had also given birth to many monsters that had absorbed the energy. Ha! I, Guaran, am unrivaled beneath the heavens. No one is my match. Let go of me. Get back, I'm going to start showing off. When the tide retreated, Guaran began to laugh as if he had gone insane. Gu Yang and the others hastily grabbed him. Long Chen patted Guaran on his forehead. His spiritual strength poured into his mind-sea. After undergoing that inhuman torment, Guaran had almost gone insane. That was very normal, as his will was the weakest of the 5 of them. He had only managed to endure with the thought of being able to stand in the limelight. Now that the pressure suddenly disappeared, signs of insanity appeared. It's over. All the suffering you went through was worth it. Your light will blind the whole world. The name Guaran will shake the hearts of others. No one will be able to eclipse you. Long Chen used an extremely soft voice, using something similar to hypnosis to calm down Guaran's taut nerves. Can I surpass you, boss? Asked Guaran. You little brat, you were just acting. Long Chen kicked Guaran into the distance. Beat him up for me. No! Boss, I was just joking. Don't take it so seriously. Begged Guaran upon seeing Gu Yang and the others rub their fists and pull up their sleeves. Long Chen was about to say something when his arms shook slightly. Lei Long and Hua Long had stealthily returned. It seemed no one had noticed them. The 2 of them both expressed their excitement. The general meaning was that this was their first time being so full. But Long Chen knew that this wasn't Lei Long's first time. It was just that what it had eaten before was just bones, while now it was eating meat. However, it truly was the first time for Hua Long Chen finally sensed a berserk power from it. That was the true level of power an earth flame should possess. Hua Long, since you're full, don't just laze around. Help me refine pills. Long Chen needed a huge amount of Enlightenment Palace pills. No, not a huge amount, an ocean's worth. He had only just given Hua Long its mission when Meng Qi, Tang Wan, and the other Dragon Blood warriors walked over. How do you feel? Long Chen smiled. Amazing. I feel like a completely different person. All the Dragon Blood warriors were excited by their gains. Not only had their physical bodies been tempered, but even their spiritual yuan had become purer and vaster. Furthermore, some of them had even gained a somewhat impure elemental energy. The tide was actually able to give them such immense benefits. They could almost count as elemental cultivators now. A completely different person? Yes, that's right. I feel like I've shed several layers now. Guaran bitterly laughed. But it was all worth it. I feel like my body has undergone a heaven-toppling transformation. Gu Yang clenched his fist. When he beat himself in his chest, a drum-like sound rang out. Yu Zifeng, Li Qi, and Song Mingyuan were also smiling excitedly. Although they had experienced a hellish torment just now, the profit was worth it. Guaran, although your constitution is very ordinary, after undergoing that suffering, your will has become much firmer, and although your physical body can't compare to Gu Yang, it's now many times stronger than an average Dragon Blood warrior. Don't forget your profession. If your base power has multiplied this much, then you'll be able to— Hee, you understand? Laughed Long Chen. I understand. Guaran's head was still in a muddled state from the pain, but with Long Chen's reminder, he couldn't help feeling ecstatic. His strongest point was his armor, and that armor multiplied his strength. However, that was based on his base strength. If his physical body had increased in power this much, then with the multiplication of his armor, his current strength must have reached a point that even terrified him. Then wouldn't I be able to dominate Celestials? Guo Ran was incomparably excited. His eyes were full of anticipation, as if he could already see himself wearing his golden armor, trampling a Celestial under his feet. There really is no curing you. Long Chen shook his head. Long Chen. Suddenly, a cold cry rang out. Long Chen looked in the direction of that voice to see Shui Guanji icily staring at him. Do you dare to have a life and death battle with me? People were startled. Shui Guanji was actually challenging him so quickly after his loss. Zhao Wuji, Yu Qianshan, and Zhong Wen were the first ones to comprehend why he would do this. They watched from a distance, expressionless. Long Chen suddenly laughed. I'll accompany you in a life and death battle anytime you want. I know you must have obtained some benefits from the core of the storm zone, benefits that have made your power increase quite a bit. However, you should get your affairs in order first, because when you are defeated by my hands again, I will take your life. His words were arrogant, but having already defeated Shui Guanji once, no one thought he was just boasting. If Long Chen had wanted to kill Shui Guanji at that time, and if no one had stopped him, there would no longer be a Shui Guanji. Shui Guanji's expression was incomparably dark. This was his greatest humiliation. A Grand Rank 2 Celestial had actually been defeated, and by someone that wasn't even a Celestial. Long Chen was correct. Shui Guanji had gained a more profound understanding of the water element. Even his water runes had changed slightly, making them stronger than ever. He was still unconvinced by his defeat. He had been careless. If he had treated Long Chen seriously from the start, perhaps the conclusion would have been reversed. Now, his power had increased, while Long Chen had wasted his time helping others. He was confident in being able to kill him, so he immediately challenged him to a life and death battle, wanting to kill him to wash away his humiliation. How could Long Chen not understand Shui Guanji's thoughts? So he wanted Shui Guanji to go ask for the Dao Sect's permission. That was to avoid still not being able to kill Shui Guanji at the end. Even Long Chen had to use his full strength to fight Shui Guanji. Furthermore, he had already revealed so many of his trump cards. Shui Guanji was definitely prepared now. If they fought again, and Long Chen was forced to reveal every last one of his trump cards, then it would be completely not worth it if he still couldn't kill Shui Guanji. But if no one stopped him from killing Shui Guanji, then obtaining a rank 2 heavenly Dao fruit would be worth exposing his trump cards. All disciples gather. We're moving on to the second trial. The Vice Sect Master's voice rang out and everyone hastily gathered to where they had originally arrived. Count yourself lucky, Long Chen. But remember, your life is mine. I might take it any time, said Shui Guanji icily. That infuriated Gu Yang and the others. They all took out their weapons. Shui Guanji really knew how to boast. Long Chen waved his hand, stopping them. It's still the same phrase. Whenever you want to die, come find me. I will send you on your way free of charge. Although his expression was calm, Shui Guanji had truly infuriated him. Long Chen had now completely seen through his temperament. This idiot was precisely a spoiled brat. He had been pampered from a young age, and now he thought of himself as the center of the world. Everything was supposed to revolve around him. Such a person was an idiot, but such an idiot would always do many idiotic things. For example, previously he had been unable to do anything to Long Chen, so he had targeted the Dragonblood Legion. He had no scruples about doing something so despicable. He had no taboos, and if he allowed this idiot to continue living, he would very likely do something like that again. Long Chen would prefer to not give him that chance. Originally, with the Primal Chaos Bead's power, Long Chen should do his best to go slaughter Celestials and gather Heavenly Dao fruits. But he did his best to avoid that. That would make him a greedy killer, and eventually he would become captive to his greed. If he couldn't keep his heart clear, then one day, he would do something he would regret. But Shui Guanji was definitely an exception. Killing him wouldn't make him feel the slightest bit bad. Looking at his back, Long Chen smiled icily. 6 hours after they had all gathered, the world suddenly trembled. The scenery around them changed, and they appeared at a large mountain valley. Mist completely obscured the inside of the valley. "This is the second trial, the 9 Netherworld Path," announced the Vice Sect Master. The mountain valley appeared both real and illusory at the same time. It seemed like a painting that was constantly fluctuating. It was clearly there, yet it somehow felt unreal. Mist filled the valley, making it impossible to see what was inside. But it somehow felt like endless mysteries were waiting to be explored inside. This is the 9 Netherworld Path. It is different from the first trial. This trial is focused on a person's soul and will. Furthermore, there is great danger inside, and there is the possibility of dying at any time. So I would advise people with weak spiritual strength to not participate. Hearing the Vice Sect Master's words, the Dragonblood warriors all looked at Gu Yang. Gu Yang sighed. It seemed this trial had no affinity with him. His spiritual strength was too lacking. To avoid him being instantly killed by even an ordinary soul cultivator, Guoran had made him a protective soul item, and Meng Qi had personally poured her soul energy into it. The Vice Sect Master continued, "The 9 Netherworld Path is filled with countless dangers. Illusions appear at every corner. If you can't distinguish between what is real and what is an illusion, you will lose your life. Don't think that this trial is the same as the Xiantian Sea. This trial is created from spiritual strength. I'm sure you can imagine just how many souls are required to activate such a huge trial." Even Long Chen's heart shook. This trial required souls to activate? Could it be that they had gathered the spiritual strength left by dying experts? I'm sure you all remember that the final trial to enter your monasteries was battling those corrupt corpses. Those corpses are gathered from the battlefields of the righteous and corrupt paths. The souls that are comparatively complete are sealed in the corpses and used as a trial. But on the battlefields of the true experts, the majority of the experts have their souls extinguished in the battle. Their leftover spiritual strength is then gathered to activate the 9 Netherworld Path. So the 9 Netherworld Path contains endless grievance and resentment in it. You'll run into all kinds of dangers. If you sense a danger to your life, you can crush the jade plates that were distributed to you previously. Then you'll be automatically transported out. However, you absolutely cannot assume that this jade plate will save your life. The majority of the dangers inside are targeted toward the soul. It's very likely that you won't even have a chance to crush the jade before dying," warned the Vice Sect Master. Everyone's hearts felt heavy, especially those people without powerful spiritual strength. But the 9 Netherworld Path was one of the Xiantian Dao sect's trials. The benefits inside had to be immense. Although the Vice Sect Master had only mentioned the dangers, opportunity and risk existed together. This was definitely an opportunity that couldn't be missed. Finally, let me warn you about one last thing. You absolutely cannot try to see your future in the trial. The Vice Sect Master's gaze roved across Long Chen and the 4 heavenly geniuses. Zhong Wen and the others' hearts trembled. To make the Vice Sect Master warn them so solemnly, this matter had to be incredibly important. They firmly remembered his warning. After a couple of hours, the mountain valley in front of them stopped fluctuating. The Vice Sect Master waved his hand. "The trial of the 9 Netherworld Path begins now." But this time, people were clearly much more cautious. There weren't any fools who charged in. The Xiantian Dao sect's trials were kept as a secret from the disciples, and none of them wanted to be the tester for others. "Long Chen, let's go. I can sense there's something I want inside." Meng Qi pulled Long Chen and Tang Wanner toward the valley. Long Chen gave the others a warning before the 3 of them entered. The valley entrance wasn't huge, being only 100 meters wide. The heavy mist inside possessed powerful spiritual fluctuations. Meng Qi, Tang Wanner, and Long Chen entered the mist together. The other disciples were constantly paying close attention to them, so they were all shocked once they entered. At that moment, their 3 spiritual fluctuations completely disappeared, almost as if a monster had swallowed them. They felt a chill as this was too strange. But seeing the vice sect master's expressionless face, they could only summon their courage and walk in as well. Long Chen had been holding their hands the whole time, but when he entered the mist, he suddenly felt his hands become empty. At the same time, the mist faded to reveal a mountain path. The mist was still extremely heavy, and he could only see a few meters in front of himself. This mist was extremely strange. His spiritual strength was unable to go through it. There was no way for him to activate his divine sense. Suddenly, a roar came from behind him. Long Chen hastily turned back to see a 30-meter flame leopard attack him. Long Chen was startled. How was it that he hadn't sensed this leopard approaching him? He hastily punched out. But his fist went straight through the leopard's body. It's a spiritual attack. As expected, this leopard was nothing more than soul energy, and it directly attacked his soul. Long Chen snorted. Forming a hand seal, a spiritual arrow shot out of his forehead and struck the leopard. The leopard immediately transformed into incredibly pure spiritual strength and surged toward Long Chen. He was somewhat startled, and he cautiously absorbed a strand of that spiritual strength. How pure! Long Chen was shocked. The leopard had actually transformed into pure spiritual strength when it was killed, and it was the kind of spiritual strength that could be absorbed to strengthen a person's soul. Unfortunately, this thing is useless to me, he sighed. His cultivation path was different from other people's. This spiritual strength actually contained a trace of energy that increased a person's mental realm. But he cultivated the 9-star Hegemon body art, and his spiritual strength increased with his cultivation base. As for comprehension, he had no need for it. He had no bottleneck to speak of, so he had no need for comprehension. But that flame leopard had truly been extremely lifelike. Furthermore, it was impossible to sense spiritual fluctuations here. Even Long Chen had thought it had been a real magical beast. Long Chen followed the path. Occasionally, more spiritual beasts would attack him, but they were each killed in one blow by him. He realized the benefits that the 9 Netherworld path gave. He didn't know how they had done this, but they had gathered the resentful spirits from the battlefields and turned them into pure spiritual strength. The Shen-Tian Dao sect's foundation was shocking. At the same time, he felt excitement for Meng Qi and Tang Wan. The two of them had powerful souls, and the benefits they could obtain here were unimaginable. That was especially true for Meng Qi. This place was practically a holy land for her. As he advanced, the spiritual magical beasts became stronger. But it was nothing to Long Chen. After walking for a long time, a surprising figure appeared in front of him. Shui Guanji. Long Chen was surprised to run into Shui Guanji here. Shui Guanji didn't say a word, however, he suddenly formed hand seals, and a huge water prison appeared around Long Chen. Break! Long Chen roared and his spiritual strength surged out. The water prison was instantly broken. But at the same time, Shui Guanji disappeared and a transparent figure appeared in his stead. Long Chen shot out a spiritual arrow that caused that figure to explode, filling the air with pure spiritual strength. Long Chen had truly been startled to see Shui Guanji here. But as soon as Shui Guanji had used a magical art, he had noticed some clues. The 9 Netherworld path was special, and other than soul energy, no other energy could be used. There was no way for Shui Guanji to use a magical art. So as soon as Shui Guanji had attacked, Long Chen had released his spiritual strength, destroying the illusion of Shui Guanji. After that figure was destroyed, Long Chen sensed a faint aura that made it seem like that figure had had some kind of faint intelligence. It was extremely strange. Long Chen couldn't be bothered to absorb the spiritual strength from that figure. This spiritual strength was useless to him. As long as he didn't use too much of his spiritual strength, there was no need for him to absorb it. He quickened his footsteps as there was something he wanted here. While Long Chen was rapidly advancing, the other disciples had also entered the 9 Netherworld path. There were 3 others that stayed behind with Gu Yang. They were all people with incredibly weak spiritual strength. If they entered, then just an ordinary spiritual beast would kill them. These 4 people were all stocky fellows who seemed to specialize in brute force. They looked at each other sympathetically. The vice sect master waited until everyone had entered the 9 netherworld path to take out a strange chessboard. This was no ordinary chessboard. In truth, it was a map. The map revealed an extremely complicated and interweaving labyrinth. There were countless dots of light that slowly appeared. Each of those dots represented a disciple. With so many dots, no one could tell who was who. Why is that dot so much brighter than the others? Asked a monastery head. This disciple killed comparatively more spiritual beasts and absorbed more spiritual strength than the others. For someone to already have such a huge lead at the very start, who could it be? One of the monastery heads who had attended the trial multiple times explained. The vice sect master pressed the dot and formed a seal with his other hand. The map disappeared, revealing a figure. It's her. That image was of a peerless beauty. With a wave of her hand, a spiritual arrow shot out, killing all the densely packed spiritual beasts in front of her. That power was absolutely shocking, but she accomplished it so easily. This woman was naturally Meng Qi. As soon as she had figured out the situation with the 9 netherworld path, she had begun a slaughter of the spiritual beasts here. Although her spiritual seed had come from Long Chen, absorbing this spiritual strength would greatly strengthen her spiritual seed. She was like a fish in water here. After that, a few other dots rapidly brightened as well. Those people were the 4 heavenly geniuses, and surprisingly, the 5th person wasn't Long Chen, but Tangwana. What is Long Chen doing? The monastery heads were all dumbfounded. It couldn't be that he was goofing off, right? Damn it, how did I end up circling back here? Long Chen was gloomy. He didn't know how many spiritual beasts he had killed as he had rushed along. But after countless forks in the road, he had returned to his original location. Continuing like this is out of the question. I have to think of something. This time, he left behind a mark at the fork before continuing. He found that not long after, he appeared on a completely foreign path. Fuck this. I'm not playing this game, cursed Long Chen. He directly closed his eyes and tried to sense the general direction of the thing he needed. This maze had continuously blocked him, and now he was out of patience. It's in that direction. Long Chen began to walk in a direction that had no path and was full of mist. Long Chen suddenly took out a saber. The last enchanted saber he had used had exploded after he had used the second form of Split the Heavens. He could only replace it with another. But this was a pole saber, a Yanuideo. 2/3 of it was the handle, while the blade only took up 1/3. There was a huge difference compared to the normal sabers he used. However, he had no better weapons now, so he could only use it. After traveling an hour through the mist, a path appeared in front of him. But Long Chen didn't follow that path. Instead, he continued in a straight line toward the thing that he sensed. He didn't know how far that thing was. What he wanted to find was the thing the vice sect master had mentioned at the end. Suddenly, he heard some sounds. Long Chen rushed in that direction. A small path appeared in front of him, and there was a woman lying on the ground, her expression pale and twisted, as if she was undergoing a painful struggle. Long Chen immediately went up to her and pressed a hand on her forehead. His powerful spiritual strength surged into her mind-sea. She was currently being attacked by a foreign spiritual strength, but Long Chen's spiritual strength destroyed it. Many thanks, senior apprentice brother. She opened her eyes and looked at him gratefully. Just now, she had been attacked by several powerful spiritual beasts. Although she had done her best to kill them, one of them had managed to invade her mind-sea, almost exterminating her soul. With her soul being attacked, she had no time to crush the jade tablet. Just thinking about it filled her with terror. You're welcome. Do you know where the place you can see your future is? Asked Long Chen. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, she gasped. I just want to gain some experience. I have no other intentions. Have you run into it? I didn't, but I ran into a senior apprentice sister from the 17th Supermonastery who said she ran into Future Lake. That Future Lake actually took the initiative to ask her if she wanted to see her future. She was so terrified that she fled, she said. Future Lake. That name does sound pretty magical. Do you know its general direction? Asked Long Chen. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, are you really planning on going there? The vice sect master said, don't worry, I wouldn't do something as stupid as trying to divine my future. That would just destroy a person's Tao heart. I just want to gain experience. Only after hearing this did she say, I remember the location. That senior apprentice sister was very nice and she told me not to go in that direction. If you want to go there to gain experience, I can bring you there. She led Long Chen in a certain direction. After a few dozen turns, even Long Chen was shocked by her amazing memory. It seemed that anyone who could attend this trial was truly extraordinary. We've arrived. Long Chen looked around and saw mist everywhere. He couldn't see anything. He was just about to ask her about this when she said, this is the fork. If you go left, you'll reach Future Lake. I don't dare to go. According to that senior apprentice sister, that place is too strange. Then thank you. I'll go take a look. With how terrifying you make it sound, even I'm getting nervous, laughed Long Chen. Then you really shouldn't go. But how can you allow yourself to be defeated by fear? Since I've decided to look, then I'm going to take a look. Without another word, Long Chen walked off. The mist completely blocked his vision after just a few steps, and he wasn't even able to see her anymore. He quickened his footsteps. After over 2 hours, Long Chen still didn't see any lake. He even suspected that she had tricked him. But there was no reason for her to trick him, and after all, he had just saved her. The strange thing was that there were no spiritual beasts on this path. There were also no forks in the road. He could only continue onward. Finally, after 6 hours, the path came to a dead end. What the fuck? She really did trick me? Long Chen couldn't help being enraged. Do you want to know your future? Suddenly, a spiritual fluctuation appeared. The mist in front of him slowly dissipated, revealing a lake. The lake's surface was as flat as a mirror, and the mist around it made it appear extremely mysterious. Long Chen was stunned. Was this lake alive? It was actually able to talk through spiritual fluctuations. I do, but does it cost money? Asked Long Chen. The lake was silent for a moment before a figure slowly rose out of the water. That figure was lithe and graceful. It seemed like a woman, but it was impossible to see any clear details. It doesn't cost money. But I'll need you to help me, said that figure. Help you with what? Long Chen was on guard. Bring me out of this place. How am I supposed to do that? Let me enter your spiritual space and bring me out. I'll not only let you see your future, but I'll also raise you into this world's strongest expert, it enticed. Damn, why does that sound so familiar? It's just like what that old ghost, Gui Sha, wanted. Long Chen suddenly smiled coldly. If my guess isn't wrong, you should be a powerful figure from the corrupt path. Despite your soul already being destroyed, you were still able to reform it. It seems you were truly an amazing person when you were alive. That figure didn't reply. After a moment of silence, it said, You're smart. That guess of yours is correct. Although I died countless years ago, just my name is enough to strike terror into the hearts of countless righteous experts. How does it sound? Little fellow, cooperate with me. Bring me out of here and back to the corrupt path, and then I will give you anything you want. It would be strange if anyone believed such a thing, thought Long Chen to himself. His head was rapidly working. Most likely, this soul was relying on the lake to survive and couldn't leave or attack, which is why it would try to entice him. He shook his head and said, The vice sect master told me that if someone wanted to tell my future here, I was to ignore them. That person is a trickster who will take your life. That's pure nonsense. I have to rely on this lake to live. How could I ever take other people's lives? Those people wanted to see their futures, and all I did was help them. Oh, I understand. You intentionally allowed them to see their future. But you changed the future they saw, making them see themselves dying tragically in order to destroy their Tao hearts, said Long Chen. Wrong. This future lake is actually a projection of the Xiantian Tao sect's priceless treasure, the reincarnation mirror. That reincarnation mirror is on the same level as my corrupt path's corrupt God-divine skull. How could I have the strength to change what it shows? Long Chen's heart shook. He hadn't expected there to be such a huge secret behind the 9 netherworld path. He hastily asked, "Then can this future lake really tell a person's future?" "Of course. But I'd advise you not to do that. The future it shows you is true, but it is also false. Divining the future invokes karma, and the reincarnation mirror will not allow that karma to affect it. It will make the asking person bear that karma." "Then isn't the Tao sect harming their own disciples? Why would they put such a thing here?" asked Long Chen. This 9 netherworld path is actually a huge formation made from condensed spiritual strength. Without the reincarnation mirror's projection, it would be impossible to control such a huge formation. Only then did Long Chen understand. This terrifying existence was most likely something that even the vice sect master wasn't aware of. Just now, he had stealthily used his spiritual strength to probe behind him, only to find that his retreat path had been cut off. It seemed that now that this existence had exposed itself, then whether or not he agreed, it wouldn't allow him to leave. But he wasn't afraid. "Then can Senior help me with something? Can you use Future Lake's power to help me divine the origin of something I have?" "That's no problem. I can help you do that, but have you agreed to what I've asked of you?" "No problem. In any case, I've had enough of the righteous path. Throwing myself to the corrupt path is also fine. However, in that case, I need your help to bring one of my companions over," said Long Chen. "Who?" "It should be the woman whose spiritual strength is the greatest of everyone here except me," said Long Chen. "Her." A figure suddenly appeared on the lake. That figure was Meng Qi. She had just killed another batch of spiritual beasts and was refining their soul energy. Long Chen was shocked. Or was this to be expected of an existence that could divine the future? He nodded. "Senior, please lead her over here. She has something I need." "Ah!" A startled cry rang out and Meng Qi suddenly appeared beside Long Chen. She panicked as she had no idea what was going on. But Long Chen said, "Meng Qi, lend me the soul-calming jade." Previously, Long Chen had given the 9-line soul-calming jade to Meng Qi, as it was extremely helpful for her. Meng Qi didn't quite understand what was happening, but she took off the pendant from her neck. Long Chen then threw it to that illusory figure. "Thank you for your trouble, Senior." When Meng Qi saw the figure he was talking to, her pupils shrunk. Then looking at the lake water, she immediately understood something. Long Chen was about to do something exceedingly crazy. Nine-line soul-calming jade? That illusory figure was surprised by this jade. "Does Senior know the origin of this jade pendant?" asked Long Chen. The figure didn't reply to him. It was silent for a while, as if it was trying to gather its determination. "You want to use Future Lake to divine this thing's origin? Can it do that?" Long Chen was delighted. He had thought that Future Lake would only be able to divine the future. Now that he knew it could divine the past, he could no longer remain calm. "You don't even know the origin of this jade, so you definitely don't know the things related to it. I've watched over Future Lake for countless years, and I've managed to find out a few secrets about it. Activating the lake in one way will divine the future, while activating it the other way will divine the past. Do you want to know this thing's future or past?" "Can I first see its future and then see its past?" asked Long Chen. "No." The illusory figure gave him a direct reply. This soul was a monster who could shock both the righteous and corrupt paths. Even with its soul shattered, it had managed to gather again in the 9 netherworld path. That was enough to prove what a terrifying existence it had been. The other souls were all turned into spiritual beasts in the 9 netherworld path. The strength of the spiritual beast was based on the strength of the soul back when it had been alive. But no matter how strong the soul had been, once it was transformed into a spiritual beast, it had no true consciousness. It could only attack the disciples instinctively. But this person was completely different. It was far too powerful. It had recalled some of its memories and was even planning on using Long Chen to escape this place. It had noticed that Long Chen's spiritual strength was incredibly powerful. Only such a person could leave this place with it without being immediately noticed. This was the only chance it had run into in countless years, so it had to make a deal with him. It had advised Long Chen not to look at his future because it was worried that he would see the scene of himself dying. The final scene that Future Lake showed people was the end of their life. Any genius who saw the scene of their demise would become dejected, and their Tao heart would receive a huge blow. Perhaps their martial heart would be instantly destroyed. This was also why the Vice Sect Master had so solemnly warned everyone not to go see their future. Future Lake was the core of the 9 Netherworld path. It was something that controlled the entire trial, so there was no way to seal it. He could only ask the disciples not to go there. And even if they were to go there, they shouldn't get close to the lake. When a person's reflection appeared on Future Lake, it would automatically show them their future. But Long Chen didn't need to see his future. What he wanted was to know his past, and that required this mysterious existence's help. Having relied on Future Lake to survive for all these years, it had definitely figured out a few ways to use it. Then just the past, said Long Chen. Meng Qi saw that Long Chen was involuntarily trembling. Even in the midst of battle, Long Chen had never been this nervous. She gently held one of his hands and found that it was covered in sweat. That figure placed the jade into the lake. Ripples immediately began to emanate from it. Those ripples eventually stopped, returning the lake to calm. A scene appeared on the mirror-like surface. The jade pendant was in a large hand. A brush left behind 2 bold and powerful lines. Haha, the dragon roars at the heavens, looking down arrogantly on the mortal world of dust. My son Long Chen possesses a special spirit root, a divine spirit bone, and supreme spirit blood. He'll definitely become a peak figure above the 9 heavens, one who will arrogantly look down on all else. Ha! It was impossible to see the owner of that hand, but it was possible to hear his domineering and happy laugh. Don't be so loud. Chinner is still sleeping. Furthermore, Chinner is also my son, and I don't want him to be fighting all day. That was a woman's voice. That voice was full of warmth and pampering. A pair of jade hands took the pendant and brush. After a moment's thought, she left behind some graceful words. Live peacefully and happily, never to be parted. That man grumbled. Ningxuang, look at how domineering my lines were. Don't you think your lines are a bit out of place? HM? He's my son too, and I don't want him to become some hero. I just want him to be able to live happily. And let me warn you, don't treat our son as a tool to fulfill your dreams, she said. Fine. I'll listen to you. The man didn't argue. Threading a red string through the pendant, he gently placed it over a sleeping baby. A pair of jade hands and a large, coarse hand gently rubbed the baby's cheeks. Those soft actions made it seem like they didn't even dare to touch the baby's skin, as if they were afraid of harming him. Long Chen couldn't hold back his tears. Those were his parents. He felt like he had once heard those words before. Hearing them again, a sour feeling filled him. That scene suddenly disappeared to be replaced with a new one. The baby was still there, and so was the jade. But those tender hands had disappeared. A pair of slender hands appeared, and they could only be described as extremely beautiful. One particular finger wore a ring that had been carved into the shape of a dragon. But these beautiful hands were carrying a sharp knife which cut open the baby's stomach, causing blood to spurt. The baby let out a wail. Ah! Meng Qi let out a startled cry. She had never seen such a cruel scene. Who could do such a thing to a baby? The hands didn't stop because of the baby's cry. They cut out a soybean-sized bone from the baby's stomach. That bone was very small, but somehow, it wasn't tainted by the slightest bit of blood. It shone brilliantly and even possessed some sparkling natural lines. Following that, a bottle appeared in one of the hands, and swiftly, a small ball of gas was sealed inside it. That ball of gas was the baby's spirit root, the foundation of a cultivator. Soon after, a syringe appeared in the other hand, piercing the baby's heart. Fresh blood filled it. This blood didn't look the same as ordinary blood. Instead of being scarlet, it was multicolored like a rainbow. That abnormal blood was the baby's spirit blood. Once the spirit blood was extracted, the baby's body immediately dimmed as if a shining jade vase had suddenly turned shabby and cracked. How cruel! Meng Qi covered her mouth. She turned away, crying. Long Chen continued to watch. He seemed to be trying to recall his memories. Those memories were incredibly indistinct. But seeing this scene, it was as if he was experiencing that pain again. However, his expression was completely calm. Nothing could be seen from his face. "He's useless now. You can get rid of him," said a voice. It was impossible to see the voice's owner, but from the actions of the hands, it was possible to tell that this was the owner of those slender hands. The voice was extremely moving and feminine. It sounded just as beautiful as her hands looked. "Master said to leave him alive. Perhaps he might have some use in the future," said another voice. "Up to you. I just feel like leaving him alive is just leaving behind a scourge. Of course, this is just my opinion. The decision is up to you." The scene began to move. The unconscious baby was brought away. Boom. When a new scene was about to appear, an explosive sound suddenly came from the lake. The image disappeared and his jade floated to the surface. Long Chen picked it up and asked, "What happened?" It was disturbed by some unknown force. This future lake is just a projection of the reincarnation mirror, and the powers behind your jade are too terrifying. The karma involved is too great, so it's normal for the divination to be cut off, explained the illusory figure. "All right, I've fulfilled your request. I'm going to enter your mind sea." "Wait a moment," said Long Chen. "What? You want to go back on our deal? You should know that even just my discarnate soul possesses enough power to instantly kill you." The figure instantly turned hostile. "Don't try bluffing with me. If you kill me, no one will be able to bring you out. When will you ever run into someone with spiritual strength as strong as me and capable of concealing your spiritual fluctuations?" sneered Long Chen. "Furthermore, I asked for your help divining my past. We've only just started. If this is how you tell other people's fortunes, then your fortune-telling booth would have long since been destroyed by others. You actually want to demand payment from me this quickly? Have you stayed here so long that your brain has rotted?" Rumble. The surrounding space began to fluctuate intensely. All the spiritual strength around future lake began to gather, forming a huge cage that imprisoned Long Chen and Meng Qi. That terrifying spiritual pressure caused Meng Qi to turn pale as paper. This mysterious figure was too terrifying. It could easily crush her. "Don't use such a childish ploy to scare me. I don't believe you'll kill me." "It's not like I said that I wouldn't bring you out," said Long Chen. Hearing Long Chen could still spout such words at this time, Meng Qi was speechless. Did he not know how to be afraid? "What do you want?" asked the figure. "That previous divination can only count as half complete. Help me divine another thing's origin, and whether or not it succeeds, I will bring you out," said Long Chen. "Are you sure?" "I swear on the name of the righteous path," said Long Chen solemnly. "The righteous path's oaths are all dogs' hit. But I will trust you this once. If you're tricking me, I've decided I won't kill you. I'll make you accompany me here for eternity." "That's no problem. Then I'm going to start. I want to divine the origin of my cultivation technique, so prepare yourself." Long Chen squatted and placed a hand in the water. He began to circulate the 9-star hegemon body art. He was filled with anticipation. If he really could learn some of the secrets of the 9-star hegemon body art, that would be excellent. That figure could only once more focus its soul energy on helping Long Chen. But at the same time, it decided it would definitely kill him in the future. It had actually been ordered around like a dog. Buzz. Future Lake trembled. The trembling grew stronger and stronger, until a loud explosion rang out. Huge waves erupted from the lake, and the entire 9 Netherworld path began to shake. Outside the 9 Netherworld path, the Vice Sect Master's expression changed. The mountain valley was shaking intensely. He had no idea what was happening. Suddenly, in front of everyone's shocked gazes, the chessboard in the Vice Sect Master's hand crumbled to dust. That chessboard was an extremely precious and special enchanted item that was capable of monitoring the entire 9 Netherworld path. But an enchanted item like it had actually crumbled. Even a sea expansion expert's attack wouldn't necessarily be able to damage it. Even the Vice Sect Master, who could easily destroy it, wouldn't be able to make it instantly crumble to dust like this. The vice sect master's expression completely changed. Something's happening in the Nine Netherworld path. What? We have to go save our disciples then, cried Shui Yunsong. Sea expansion experts cannot enter. They'll be destroyed by the laws of the Nine Netherworld path, said the vice sect master. Let's just keep watch. The Nine Netherworld path is connected to the other 4 regions, so it's not necessarily our side that is causing this. At the same time, in front of the Western Desert, Southern Sea, Northern Source, and Central Plains 9 Netherworld paths, countless experts were completely dumbfounded. They had never seen such a phenomenon before. It was the same mountain valley and the same trial. The only difference was that the people were different. In the Central Plains, at the head Xiantian Dao sect, a sea expansion disciple ran into the Xiantian palace. Pushing open the doors without a care for the glares from the countless experts, he hastily cried, "Cracks are appearing on the reincarnation mirror. The grand sect formation is becoming unstable." What? The palace's countless experts hastily flew off. All of them were shocked. They knew what the reincarnation mirror was, and that was why they were so shocked. They quickly arrived at an underground palace. There was a mirror atop an altar there. The mirror was 300 meters wide. Runes revolved within it, appearing like stars. A powerful pressure came from it that made it so even sea expansion experts couldn't approach it. This was one of the Xiantian Dao sect's core treasures, the reincarnation mirror. But countless faint cracks had started to appear on the edge of the mirror. All those experts turned pale upon seeing that. If the reincarnation mirror exploded here, then the power it would release would instantly destroy the Xiantian Dao sect. Close the 9 Netherworld paths projection. An old voice suddenly rang out in their ears. Sect Master. Within the 9 Netherworld path, Meng Qi was filled with shock as she looked at the berserk future lake. Before anything could appear, the lake had erupted like a volcano, as if it had been destroyed by some terrifying force. What did you do? Raged the illusory figure. Boom. Future lake completely exploded. The endless water transformed into spiritual strength that rapidly dissipated into the surroundings. Bastard! The illusory figure charged at Long Chen. It released a berserk spiritual strength, aiming to directly possess him. Long Chen, shouted Meng Qi. It's fine. Long Chen pushed Meng Qi back. He smiled at the figure charging at him. Thunder filled the air, and a huge lightning arrow shot forward. How can you possess tribulation lightning? Boom. They were too close and Long Chen was too strong. That figure let out a mournful shriek upon being pierced by the lightning arrow. Lei Long, trap it? Following Long Chen's words, a huge lightning dragon flew out and wrapped around that figure. This is impossible. How can any human possibly control tribulation lightning? That figure desperately struggled, filled with terror. Idiot, I have plenty of experience dealing with people like you, sneered Long Chen. From the very start, Long Chen had known that this soul was trying to trick him. The first thing he thought of was the corrupt corpse he had encountered in the monastery's trial, Geisha. The soul that was sealed inside the corpse had vainly wanted Long Chen to bring him out. But just from his fiendish aura, it was obvious it wasn't some good fellow. Back then, he had relied on some weak thunder force to escape from his control. Now, the same thing repeated itself. But with Lei Long, how could he be afraid of some spiritual body? No matter how strong a spiritual body was, it would be suppressed in front of tribulation lightning. Thunder force was the bane of souls, and considering his thunder force came from the heavens, there was no way this spiritual body could have done anything to him. Otherwise, Long Chen wouldn't have dared to talk to it like he had. However, having seen a part of his past, the risk had been worth it. The only frustrating thing was that he hadn't expected the 9-star Hegemon body art to be so terrifying. Future Lake hadn't even been able to start divining its past before being destroyed. What Long Chen didn't know was that if the Xiantian Dao sect hadn't closed the projection fast enough, even the reincarnation mirror would have shattered. Meng Qi was filled with shock as she watched that terrifying figure being easily captured by Long Chen. Although she was used to Long Chen's ability to cause trouble, this was on a whole new level. Meng Qi, Prepare yourself, said Long Chen. What? Boom! Lei Long suddenly increased its strength, and that figure was completely crushed by its thunder force. Following its destruction, countless spiritual crystals appeared in the air. We really struck gold this time. Meng Qi, hurry and absorb them, exclaimed Long Chen. Ordinary spiritual beasts were only able to leave behind some spiritual gas and liquid. But this existence had actually exploded into this many crystal bodies. These crystal bodies would only appear when spiritual strength was compressed to the peak. The amount of pure energy inside them was unimaginable. There's too much energy inside these crystals. I can't absorb this much at once, cried Meng Qi. Aya, my wife, when did you become so foolish? Just seal them within yourself and then slowly refine them in the future. I'll help you quick. As soon as Future Lake had exploded, the mist here began to dissipate rapidly. It wouldn't be long before everything became clear. Long Chen didn't want others to know what had happened here, so he quickly released his spiritual strength and caught the crystals in the air, bringing them toward Meng Qi. Meng Qi immediately pulled all of them into her mind sea. That caused her to turn pale. Those crystals were too terrifying, and each one of them contained over 10 times the spiritual strength she possessed. Immediately absorbing so many of them caused a burst of pain in her soul. Let's go! Long Chen pulled Meng Qi into a run, and they hurriedly left this destroyed location. He also stealthily transferred his spiritual strength to her to help her seal the crystals. Over 1,000 crystals were now in her mind sea. That was like storing over 1,000 explosives in a storage house. If even one exploded, Meng Qi's soul would disperse. But now that the mysterious figure had been destroyed, those crystals lacked any master, so Meng Qi could control them. Boss! Long Chen was in the midst of rushing away when someone called out to him. He hastily stopped to see Guoran. Ha, little fellow, you've finally become a celestial? Laughed Long Chen. When Long Chen had pulled the 5 of them into the storm zone, he had decided to give each of them a heavenly Dao fruit after the Xiantian Sea disappeared. He had given Guoran the fruit from Huo Wufeng. Guoran was the weakest of them, but he was also the one with the best head. When it came to leading troops, he definitely had a talent. So this second-rank heavenly Dao fruit would help the Dragonblood Legion the most when given to him. Hee, it's all thanks to boss, laughed Guoran. Long Chen had told them not to mention some secrets during the trial to avoid others hearing about it. But in truth, he was being overcautious. It was impossible for people outside the 9 Netherworld path to hear them, and even the chessboard had been destroyed. How were your gains? Asked Long Chen. Hee, amazing. I never thought that I, Guoran, would ever possess such spiritual strength. This is incredibly important to me, and it'll be extremely helpful for my forging. Forging masters also required spiritual strength. But it was just that Guoran's natural talent was limited, and his spiritual strength could only be described as ordinary. Now, with a rank 2 Celestial's power, he had slaughtered a horde of spiritual beasts, which made his spiritual strength much stronger. Guoran felt like a completely new person. The current him had the qualifications to boast to anyone. He was incredibly grateful to Long Chen, and he had already forgotten his misery in the storm zone. All disciples, crush your jade plates to leave the 9 Netherworld path. A mishap has occurred with this trial, so it ends now. The Vice Sect Master's voice rang out. Everyone crushed their jade plates, and after a brief spatial fluctuation, they appeared outside the mountain valley. Heavens! Long Chen and the others had only just exited when startled cries rang out. Countless gazes concentrated on them. To be more specific, they weren't looking at Long Chen, but at Yu Zifeng, Li Qi, Song Mingyuan, and Guoran. The 4 of them were all releasing powerful heavenly Dao fluctuations. That was an inconceivable aura released when someone had just become a celestial. The most shocking thing to everyone was that it was the person most lacking in talent, the one who had cried like a dying pig in the storm zone, whose fluctuations were the strongest. Furthermore, there were 2 kinds of fluctuations coming from him. He was clearly a rank 2 celestial. How is that possible? Whether it was the Xiantian Dao sect's disciples, the monastery heads, or even the vice sect master, they were completely shocked. Although the vice sect master had said that after undergoing the torment in the storm zone, there would be a chance of them becoming celestials, that was just a chance. The probability definitely wouldn't surpass 10%. But now, the 4 that had entered the 9 netherworld path had all awakened as celestials. Furthermore, one was even a rank 2 celestial. If it had been Yu Zifeng or one of the others, that would be acceptable. After all, they had displayed a shocking will in the storm zone. Even the experts admired them. They hadn't made a sound when undergoing that hellish torment. But it was Guoran, the one with the worst talent and the weakest will, who had awakened as a rank 2 celestial. That simply didn't make any sense. However, after a moment of shock, the vice sect master became ecstatic. Although this was inexplicable, it was a great thing for the Xiantian Dao sect, an incredibly great thing. The person most excited about this would have to be Shui Wuhan. Now, she had 4 more celestials, and one was even a rank 2 celestial. It was a pity that Gu Yang hadn't entered the 9 netherworld path, or it seemed there would have been a large chance of him becoming a celestial as well. Although she didn't know what exactly was going on, she knew it definitely had to do with Long Chen. Even after all this time, she still didn't know his limits. What are you looking at? What? You don't want to accept that I'm a rank 2 celestial now? Then let's fight. Shui Guanji and the others' expressions of disbelief irritated Guoran, especially that inconcealable envy in Shui Guanji's eyes. Even if you've become a rank 2 celestial, you're still trash. With your combat strength, any other rank 2 celestial would crush you, sneered Shui Guanji. He was entirely correct. Guoran would probably even be suppressed by a rank 1 celestial. If he wanted to defeat a rank 1 celestial, he would have to rely on his cry of the heavenly Daos. Having been exposed, Guoran was infuriated. How dare you look down on me? I'll slap you just like my boss did. Guoran took on a slapping posture. But just as he was about to strike, he felt something was wrong. He raged at Gu Yang and the others. What are you doing? Let go of me. I'm going to teach this brat a lesson. Only then did Gu Yang and the others realize Guoran was just finding a way out for himself. They quickly helped him with his act, pulling on him. After all, brothers had to help each other. Guoran struggled a few times, but his brothers refused to let go of him. He raged at Shui Guanji, count yourself lucky. I'll give my brother's face this time, but don't let me run into you alone. Long Chen was speechless. He sighed. Even as a rank 2 celestial, Guoran still only had such a low-grade acting ability. He hadn't improved at all. Brother, that's pretty much enough. You're a different person from before, and you should change your acting style, whispered Li Qi. Did anyone run into something strange inside? The vice sect master interrupted their messing around. They hastily became silent and shook their heads, expressing that they hadn't run into anything in particular. Long Chen also naturally wouldn't stupidly stand out, so he shook his head. Meng Qi looked at Long Chen's solemn expression and couldn't help but feel it was funny. Suddenly, she felt that while she was by his side, he would definitely do unimaginable things constantly, things that could stimulate a person to death. Furthermore, Long Chen's head was clearly not normal. It seemed there was nothing in this world he didn't dare to do. Since everyone shook their heads, the vice sect master said, something unexpected occurred with the 9 netherworld path. I'm glad you're all safe. The interruption of this trial is unavoidable, but don't be disappointed that your profits were lessened. The Dao sect definitely won't let its disciples suffer. Due to this, the next trial's rewards will be increased. Go back and rest. As for when the next trial will begin, we'll have to wait for news from the head sect. This is actually a good thing. Previously, the 3 trials were all held continuously. But because there was no time to rest, there was also no time to adjust yourselves to your gains in time for the 3rd trial. The 3rd trial's rewards are the greatest, so use this time properly. The vice sect master waved his hand, and space twisted. They returned to the Xiantian Plaza. However, not everyone had returned alive. There were quite a few people lying on the ground as if they were asleep. But their souls had disappeared. There were over 400 of them, and this loss made people's hearts sink. They hadn't expected this many talented disciples to die on the 9 Netherworld path. 7 members from the 36th Super Monastery had died. That cast a shadow on people's hearts. Their previous excitement diminished. Reality was just this cruel. If you wanted to get stronger, you had to take risks. No one in this world could become a supreme expert without taking any risks. If you wanted to become an expert, you had to risk your life. If you didn't want to become an expert, you would have to accept that an expert might take your life at any moment. The cultivation world was just that cruel. The monastery heads brought their disciples back to their camps. They began to celebrate. Although there had been casualties, that was unavoidable. Those who survived had to continue getting stronger. Gu Yang and the others were missing from the celebration in the 36th Super Monastery. Gu Yang had gone into seclusion, saying that he would also become a celestial. That drew flabbergasted gazes, but Long Chen and the others knew that once he refined the heavenly Tao fruit, he would immediately become a celestial. There was no way around this. Gu Yang's spiritual strength was terrible. In front of the monastery heads, there was no way he could hide the fluctuations of refining a heavenly Tao fruit. Now he finally had a chance. After the celebration, everyone began to cultivate. They had made huge gains in the Shentian Sea and the 9 Netherworld path. Thus, they took advantage of this period to absorb these gains so they could be at their peak state for the final trial. As everyone else went into seclusion, so did Long Chen. His mind entered the primal chaos space, and he saw Huolong refining pills. 5-ring Enlightenment Palace pills. Huolong was actually able to refine 5-ring Enlightenment Palace pills. It must have absorbed an incredible amount of flame energy from the core of the storm zone. Even its alchemy ability had increased by such a huge amount. Huolong, thank you. Long Chen saw over 1,000 Enlightenment Palace pills. Huolong transformed into a small flame serpent and coiled around Long Chen's arm. It rubbed its head against Long Chen. Long Chen felt a childlike emotion coming from it. It's been hard on you. If you're tired, rest. Long Chen rubbed its head. After comforting it for a while, he left the encampment. He directly rushed off, going outside the Shintian Dao sect. But he had only just reached the gates when a disciple stopped him. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, the trial is imminent. If you leave now, Long Chen frowned. Am I not allowed to leave? No, you can. But the 3rd trial might start at any moment. If you're out and don't make in time, that would be a huge loss for you, warned the disciple. That's fine. Thank you for the reminder. But I'll just stroll around. When I hear the bell to gather, I'll immediately return. Long Chen patted that disciple on the shoulder, grateful for his reminder. He left. He had no choice but to leave. This number of pills would be enough to truly condense the Enlightenment Palace star. Just condensing the cyclone had almost destroyed a training room. Once the cyclone condensed into a star, it would cause a huge disturbance. Long Chen found a large mountain. From here, the Shintian Dao sect was just a dot in the distance. As long as he didn't go too far, it wouldn't disturb the sect, and he would still be able to tell when the trial started. He began to consume the 5-ring Enlightenment Palace pills, shoving them handful by handful down his throat. He had to work fast. Once he reached a certain point in condensing the star, he would have no choice but to finish. If he really missed the trial because of that, he would have an urge to kill himself. Furthermore, he had seen some clues about his origins in the 9 Netherworld path. Now he wanted to see his parents even more. He had to reach the peak of the cultivation world as fast as possible. Even something as amazing as Future Lake had been unable to completely divine the past of the Jade Pendant. That meant some powerful force had disturbed the reincarnation mirror. That was enough to prove how shocking his origins had to be. The thing that startled him the most was that Future Lake had been able to see a corner of his past, but not even the slightest bit about the 9-star Hegemon body art. Just trying to take a peek had caused it to explode. That made him think of some terrifying possibilities. But the mysteries he had to unravel were too huge, and he still wanted to be able to live after unraveling them. 3 days passed without the slightest sound from the Xiantian Dao sect. On the other hand, a loud explosive sound suddenly came from Long Chen's hand, and a terrifying energy erupted. Lightly, lightly. Boom. Damn it. Although Long Chen had done his best, he had been unable to control it. The instant the cyclone reached its peak, an earth-shattering power erupted and the mountain below him crumbled. Boulders were sent tumbling away, followed by a loud rumbling. Damn, I still ended up causing this much of a ruckus? I have to slip away. Long Chen had no time to examine the changes in his body. He immediately fled a dozen mountains away. When he turned to look back, he saw several people had already appeared there. This disturbance was too great, and so some disciples had come over to take a look. Luckily, Long Chen had slipped away fast enough and they hadn't seen him. Sighing with relief, Long Chen examined his hand. The cyclone had disappeared, and a small star had taken its place. Although it was just the size of sesame seed and just an embryonic form, he felt a resonance with the Fengfu, Alioth, and Life Fate stars. He felt endless energy surging out of him. He punched the air. A loud bang rang out and it was like space was about to be blown apart. The Enlightenment Palace star really doesn't let me down. Just the power of my physical body is over 10 times greater. Once the star is completely condensed, just how powerful will I be? Long Chen was filled with delight at his new strength. Last time, he might have managed to defeat Xue Guanji, but he knew that his victory had been a bit lucky. If Xue Guanji hadn't been so careless, it would have been difficult to say who would win. Moreover, Xue Guanji and the others had definitely gained huge benefits in the Shentian Sea and Nine Netherworld path. But he hadn't gained anything. Although Lei Long and Hua Long had gotten stronger, they were his strongest trump cards, and he couldn't easily reveal them. If he did reveal them, then it had to be for the goal of killing his opponents. Previously, he had still been worrying about fighting Xue Guanji and Zhao Wuji during the third trial. If he didn't want to reveal Lei Long and Hua Long, then he would have been suppressed. But now, he no longer had to have that worry. Now that my strength has increased this much, my physical body should be able to endure 1,000 caddies of force. Should I try it? Long Chen took out the green dragon scale. He closed his eyes and aligned himself with its fluctuations in an attempt to use his soul to open the seal on it. The dragon expert had refined the essence blood within the scale and also placed a seal on it. The seal was to preserve as much of the essence blood's power as possible. As his spiritual strength circulated, the seal was slowly opened. There was a single drop of green blood inside the scale, and Long Chen drew it into his palm. Boom! Long Chen screamed. He was blown back, wildly vomiting blood and his flesh flying off him. He collapsed on the ground, filled with indescribable pain. Looking down, his soul almost fled in terror. Almost all his flesh had exploded just now. There was only a thin layer of flesh on his bones, and even his internal organs were about to slip out. What's going on? Long Chen was appalled. He hastily circulated the primal chaos space, and his flesh began to rapidly restore. In an incense stick's worth of time, his body was recovered. He was completely pale. That had been too dangerous. He had just been the slightest bit away from a terrible death. He hastily examined the scale. The essence blood had once more been sealed. What is going on? Didn't it say that I could try refining the blood once my body could endure 1,000 caddies of force? Suddenly he slapped his leg. Damn it, what a conner! So that's what try meant. He could try to refine it once he could endure 1,000 caddies of force. In other words, if he had reached that level, he could try it without instantly dying. Ugh, thank goodness I didn't try this earlier. Otherwise, I would no longer exist. Long Chen felt a burst of fear. At the same time, his reverence for the dragon expert increased. The dragon had said that this dragon scale was from the molting of its infancy. A baby dragon was a green dragon. For just one drop of its essence blood to be this terrifying, that was practically against the natural order. It was thousands of times more terrifying than the legends. Fine, I'll admit you're amazing. Without fully condensing the fourth star, I won't touch you. Long Chen had an urge to cry as he placed the dragon scale into the primal chaos space. Currently, the primal chaos space was a land of death. As his physical body grew stronger, the energy of the trees inside was clearly not able to keep up with him. One complete recovery had exhausted all the life energy in the trees. Furthermore, his body was still very weak. His flesh might have returned, but he was only at 60% power now. He needed to find some kind of stronger vegetation to replace his trees. Long Chen wearily returned to the Dao sect. Perhaps it was because of what had happened in the 9 Netherworld path, but the third trial, which should have come right after the second trial, only began half a month later. During that time, the Xiantian Dao sect's disciples transformed, each of them becoming full of enthusiasm and energy. When Gu Yang appeared in front of everyone after he awakened as a celestial, they were once more shocked. Now, the 36th super monastery had 7 celestials, one of which was a rank 2 celestial, as well as a monster like Long Chen. When it came to strength, the 36th super monastery was no longer lacking compared to the super monasteries of the 4 heavenly geniuses. This metamorphosis was truly shocking. Previously, Gu Yang, who hadn't attended the 9 Netherworld path, had said that he wouldn't come out of seclusion until he became a celestial. At that time, many people had sneered. Did he think someone could become a celestial just because they wanted to? But now that Gu Yang was standing in front of them, those people practically went crazy. He had actually succeeded. However, it wasn't just the 5 of them who had awakened as celestials after the trials. There was one other ordinary disciple who had become a celestial. But when the odds were compared, they were completely different. Other than Gu Yang's awakening, another shocking matter was that the 4 heavenly geniuses had all advanced, going from the 8th heaven stage of Xiantian to the 9th heaven stage. Each of them was like a sharp blade, and their auras had completely transformed. Not even rank 1 celestials could get close to them, as that aura would push them away. Their gazes seemed to shine, but when they looked at Long Chen, they couldn't help being somewhat disappointed. He was still at the 3rd heaven stage, and his complexion didn't look very good. He almost seemed like he had been ill. Of course he didn't look good. Only when he had returned had he realized that his meridians had been damaged by the green dragon essence blood. The only pleasant surprise was that when he had healed his meridians, he had found an extremely weak dragon chi within them. That was the aura that the dragon blood had left behind. Although that aura had wreaked havoc on his body, this dragon chi was slowly strengthening his body. Long Chen hadn't expected to obtain such a blessing. Now, it should be easier for him to refine the dragon blood in the future. He had laid down a solid foundation. However, he didn't try refining the dragon blood again. Although trying again and again could slowly refine the blood, each time he released the seal, he would lose a portion of the blood's energy. That wasn't worth it. Currently, Long Chen's meridians had only recovered by around 80 to 90%. So his complexion was definitely not so good. It couldn't be that he overindulged in alcohol and women, muttered one female upon seeing Meng Qi and Tang Wan. When others heard that, they came to a sudden comprehension. That look made Meng Qi and Tang Wan blush with both bashfulness and anger. Don't lower yourself to their level, comforted Long Chen. Their expressions became a little better, but his next words made them want to beat him up. If you want to play that kind of game, we can do it any time. It sounds like it's very fun and challenging. Long Chen said in a voice only the 3 of them could hear. Tang Wan had an urge to bite him. Seeing Long Chen flirting with Meng Qi and Tang Wan, Zhao Wuji was infuriated. Long Chen, pray that you don't encounter me during this trial. If we meet, I'll crush you to a pulp. Idiot. Long Chen merely snorted. He couldn't be bothered to say anything more. Such a person had definitely been spoiled into an idiot by the grown-ups around him. He was someone who was not in touch with reality. Whatever he wanted, he got, and so he never cared about angering others. But when others angered him, it was like they had to pay with their lives. In his eyes, and also the other heavenly geniuses, they were the pride of this world. Others were only there for them to trample on and play with. They were strong, and they had powerful backers, so they had no need to respect others. Long Chen had already seen many such people, And he had also killed many of them as well. Only when they were about to die did they finally understand what terror was. But regretfully, Long Chen never gave them much time to feel it. He directly sent them to be reincarnated. So, he was too lazy to bother with such people. If they truly provoked him, then he would directly kill them. At this time, the vice sect master appeared. Everyone became silent and straightened their backs. Quite a few of their hearts tensed. The third trial was about to begin. Long Chen and the others appeared atop a mountain. In front of them was a huge stone staircase. The staircase was extremely wide, with each step having a surface area of several thousand meters. The staircase soared high into the clouds, so high that it was impossible to see the end. This is the Xiantian Dao sect's martial gathering's third trial, the Netherworld Heaven Staircase. The vice sect master's words rang out in everyone's ears. This staircase is made of stone from the world of the dead. The formation carved into it is able to grab hold of something that doesn't exist in the physical world. Atop the Netherworld Heaven Staircase, each person will be able to gain karmic luck. Karmic luck is something ephemeral and mysterious, but it truly exists. Those who can become peak experts all possess extremely great karmic luck. No matter how high a person's cultivation base reaches, no matter how strong they become, if their karmic luck is terrible, they will constantly run into pitfalls and dangers, and they will sooner or later fall. As for all of you, you've risen above countless others. You cannot argue that a great deal of that was because of luck. So this trial is extremely important to you. Do your best to climb as high as possible. With each step you take, more karmic luck will gather on you. Everyone was absolutely shocked. Those whose cultivation bases had reached their level had all come into contact with things that others couldn't. This so-called karmic luck was a blessing the heavens bestowed on its creatures. Although there was no solid evidence that proved karmic luck existed, anyone who had cultivated to their level firmly believed in it. The slightest increase in karmic luck could completely change a person's destiny. It could turn danger into safety, disaster to fortune. It was an extremely inconceivable existence. It was completely unexpected for the Netherworld Heaven Staircase to be able to increase a person's karmic luck. This was an absolutely heaven-defying treasure. They were all eager to get started. The vice sect master continued, "There are 999 stairs. Between each of the large stairs lie 99 smaller stairs. Now, according to the rules, I will explain the rewards for the Netherworld Heaven Staircase. Everyone should listen closely." There were actually more rewards? Everyone was ecstatic. This Netherworld Heaven Staircase was truly worthy of being the final trial. Any disciple who can reach the 333rd, 666th, or 999th step will receive a reward. As for what the reward will be, no one knows in advance, because those rewards are given to you by the Netherworld Heaven Staircase. It is decided by a person's karmic luck. There are possible good rewards, and there are possible trash rewards. It will be up to your karmic luck. Furthermore, on the 999th step, there is a platform. The final reward is on that platform. As for what the reward is, no one knows. These rewards were set up by the head sect, but I can guarantee that the rewards will surpass your wildest imaginations. Shui Guanji and the other experts' eyes began to shine. They had obviously decided that they had to get that final reward. Alright, it's time. The Xiantian Martial Gathering's final trial begins now. The eager disciples, who had long since been impatient to begin, charged. But they had only just stepped onto the Netherworld Heaven Staircase when their expressions changed. They felt like they had entered water, and their footsteps became slow. They not only felt physical pressure, but they also felt a pressure on their souls. Furthermore, a kind of lazy, weary feeling filled them. One made them feel like they would rather take a good nap than continue climbing. Long Chen also felt this strangeness when he stepped onto the first step. He told his people, "The Xiantian Sea was a trial for your physical bodies, while the 9 Netherworld Path was a trial for your souls. This Netherworld Heaven Staircase combines both aspects and more. It targets a person's physical body, soul, will, and even the desires deep within their heart. It will cause a feeling of laziness and other negative emotions well up within you. However, that should be nothing to you. Brothers, you're all warriors who have tempered yourselves through blood and fire. Bring out your hot blood and youthful passion to let everyone see what true experts are. Encouraged Long Chen. Charge! The Dragon Blood warriors' morale skyrocketed, and ignoring the negative emotions the staircase gave them, they rushed up. At this time, the Vice Sect Master waved his hand, and the stone stage beneath him and the other experts who had accompanied their disciples here began to rise into the air. Sitting on the stage, it was possible to see everything happening on the staircase clearly. I wonder whether anyone will be able to get the final reward this time, muttered one monastery head. That was because in the past, no one had managed to reach the 999th step. And even if someone did manage to reach the 999th step, they wouldn't necessarily be able to obtain that final reward. There's a very high chance this time. At the very least, there's a high chance for 5 people. A rare smile appeared on the Vice Sect Master's face. What? Isn't there another person who just advanced to a rank 2 celestial? The Vice Sect Master's expression became odd as his gaze fell on Guoran, who was currently waving a large flag and cheering for everyone. He sighed. To tell the truth, in all my years, I have never seen such a weak rank 2 celestial. My eyes really have been opened to the world. Everyone else nodded as they looked at Guoran. He truly was a marvel among cultivators. Combined with Long Chen, they could be called the 2 great marvels. As they were talking, there were 5 people advancing at the same speed, far ahead of the others. They had already reached the 100th stair. These 5 people were Zhao Wuji, Shui Guanji, Zhong Wen, Yu Qianshan, and Long Chen. It was impossible to help others on the staircase. So Long Chen didn't need to look after the others. He advanced just as quickly as the 4 heavenly geniuses. This proved without a doubt that Long Chen's power matched theirs. Many people who had been unconvinced before finally had to shut their mouths. Long Chen might have defeated Shui Guanji previously, but many people thought he had just been lucky, and that Shui Guanji had simply been careless. Then, the 4 heavenly geniuses had made huge gains in the Xiantian Sea and the 9 Netherworld Path, while it seemed Long Chen hadn't gained anything at all. Due to that, many people thought Long Chen had lost the qualifications to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 4 heavenly geniuses. But now, the 5 of them were advancing at the same speed, and they seemed to be competing with each other. All of them refused to lose, so it clearly showed his strength. The 5 of them had rapidly reached the 100th stair. Long Chen immediately felt the pressure double, but they continued rushing forward without a pause. Obviously, they had already begun to compete to see who was the strongest. Behind Long Chen was a mass of celestials. They had reached the 80th step, but the difference was already clear. Meng Qi and Tang Wan'er were holding hands as they rapidly advanced. They were at the frontmost of the rank 1 celestials. They seemed just like fairies who had descended on the world, and they were the most beautiful scene on the Netherworld Heaven staircase. Behind the celestials were the ordinary disciples, with the Dragon Blood warriors at the front. As for the genius Guoran, he was actually shamelessly hiding amongst them. However, to express his grand and noble character, he waved a banner back and forth, cheering everyone on. That righteous act of his made it seem like he had sacrificed his chance to compete for first place with the other top experts in order to help raise everyone's morale. The people behind the Dragon Blood warriors were clearly slower. They were like a flock of sheep, and they ended up forming a twisting dragon on the staircase. At this time, it was possible to tell a person's overall ability. Many people had no problem with the pressure to their physical bodies and souls, but their wills were clearly a fatal weak point. The person in the last place had only reached the 6th step. As he looked up at the endless staircase, a bewildered and lost expression appeared in his eyes. The monastery heads didn't feel any shock or anger at that scene. That was because they knew just how bizarre the Netherworld Heaven staircase was. They had also once climbed it, so they knew what agony these disciples were going through. Once you were tired, once you were weary to the bone, or perhaps once your confidence lagged, negative emotions would erupt within you. A voice would tell you to give up, that you couldn't hold on for much longer, so why must you force yourself? It would entice you, seduce you, tell you that this staircase wasn't as magical as you once thought. Karmic luck? That was just nonsense, a story to trick people. That voice didn't come from outside, but from within. It came from the lazy part of a person's heart. Every person had a lazy side. If your will wasn't strong enough, you wouldn't be able to suppress it. On the netherworld heaven staircase, your will was constantly tested, and it would make it far too easy to give in. This was something unrelated to talent. So each time the netherworld heaven staircase was activated, a few extremely talented disciples would end up falling behind some disciples with a rather average talent. That was because their superior talent made their will less steady. Boom. Suddenly, the staircase trembled slightly. Everyone was startled, and hastily looking up, they saw 5 people had already reached the 333rd stair. When Long Chen and the others arrived at the 333rd stair, their shoulders sank slightly as a powerful pressure collapsed on them. This pressure didn't just target their bodies, but also their minds. It made them feel extremely weary. Long Chen felt that impact especially, but he ignored it. This kind of weariness was just a feeling, or perhaps it could be called a misperception. You couldn't be confused by it. If you were, it would give birth to negative emotions, and then it would be even harder to suppress it. Each space beside the 5 of them trembled, and a ball of light appeared. Those balls of light were only a foot wide. They were like small whirlpools, and it was impossible to see what was inside them. Those are your rewards. Reach into the light and pull out what you were given, said the vice sect master. Seeing that Long Chen and the others had received a reward, the disciples that were bitterly climbing were filled with anticipation. Just what would their rewards be? Since no one else wants to, let me go first. Yu Qianshan reached into his ball of light and pulled out a certain item. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.